back to HPP, the Hoops Prospects podcast. Last week, we wrapped up our group mock draft with our second round selections, and you can find a complete review of the entire mock draft, including player summaries, on hoopsprospects.com. You can also find all HPP episodes, this podcast, on hoopsprospects.com or any of the major podcast outlets, including Apple and Spotify. My name is Richard Harris, and I'm joined by the entire HPP crew today: Drew Barton, Hugh Baxter, Connor Youngberg, and Cam Reel. Today, we're going to wrap up the 2022 NBA draft by handing out draft grades for each team. Gentlemen, how you doing today, Cam, and everyone else? Cam, did you have you survived the Stanley Cup celebrations in Denver?
I'm here in body, but not in spirit, Rich.
You sound it.
I feel like a champion today.
Wow,
that's all I have to say about that.
You're kind of like roadkill that's just been put through a microwave.
I got the double whammy of a Denver championship and my birthday in a row. So
right.
I'm feeling a little pickled.
Right. Cam's birthday was yesterday.
Yeah. Cam's sleep schedule is the only thing worse than yours, Rich.
Mine's back. I was up bright and early today. Well, actually, I'm always up bright and early. It's just it's usually about the time I go to bed.
I don't know if when the moon is still out counts as bright and early.
So now, are you a Avalanche fan, Cam?
I'm an adopted fan, I would say.
Okay.
I got into the Avs early in the year when it started to look like they were going to be really good.
Right.
And my girlfriend's dad took us to a couple of games, so
very nice.
Definitely started to get into it more.
Yeah. Hockey's a great sport.
Awesome.
In fact, where Connor goes to school, I think it is like the sport, right?
Yeah, we were number one in the nation for like a solid 3 days. But yeah, coming back at hockey school, it got me really into hockey. So being a Ranger fan, really excited when we made it that far. But I'm glad the Avs took down the Lightning finally.
Yeah.
Something had to do it.
I'll tell you what, for a 6-game series, it couldn't have been much closer. Hugh, how popular is hockey in Australia? Must be right up there, huh?
And we have nothing to do with ice hockey. We do have field hockey is pretty big though. That's, to me, hockey is field hockey, what you guys call field hockey. So we're pretty good at that. And I had a few friends growing up who were really eager on that sport, played a lot, and we actually do pretty well at the Olympics, or maybe it's the Commonwealth Games where they play hockey. But yeah, to me, coming to America and Colgate, where I started my first 2 years of college, they are also a massive ice hockey school, and they had just built a brand new ice hockey arena. So I went to a lot of those games, and those were a blast. So yeah, I'm hoping one day I'll be able to get to an NHL game because they look like a lot of fun.
Alrighty. Anybody want to comment on anything coming and going in the NBA before we move on to our draft grades?
What is the over/under Kyrie last 3 days on the Nets before he requested trade?
We actually have a listener question about him.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes,
he did opt in today, I think, though.
Yes, he did. That's what I'm saying. He's going to last 3 days and then disappear into the jungle.
Since it came up, I'll read the question now ahead of time because we have a few more. So let me get down there. Courtney asks, do you think that Kyrie will end up with any of his preferred landing spots? He lists them out: Lakers, Clippers, or Courtney may be a woman as well. Lakers, Clippers, Heat, Knicks, Mavericks, Sixers. So obviously with him opting in, I would say, he's not that probably signifies that he was the Nets basically told him, if you can work out a trade, go right ahead. and then soon after he opted in. So I would assume that I guess his only option was to turn it down and then go sign with the Lakers for $6 million or whatever.
Yeah, well, the Lakers just got Russ opting in as well for his $47 million this upcoming year. So I'm sure they're thrilled about that.
Right.
Then he went on Twitter and was singing Beyonce in the car. Love that.
I'm rich. I'm rich once again.
One less team in the way for the Warriors repeating. Do not worry about the Lakers.
So
you didn't have to worry about him before.
Yes, right. Yeah, who was worried about him anyway? But so I got to read you this quote that Kyrie used when he re-upped on his contract. he said, this goes into what Charles Barkley said about him. Normal people keep the world going, but those who dare to be different lead us into tomorrow.
Is this the flat world he's talking about or the round one? Which world?
Yeah, that's kind of funny because it reminded me of a quote. It reminded me of the quote by Sir Isaac Newton, which would be just the opposite of what Kyrie said when Sir Isaac Newton was giving credit for some of his work to other people he worked with, when he said he was standing on the shoulders of giants. This is the antithesis of saying something like that. There's nothing gracious. There's nothing but I, me. And wow, what a self-important douche. When we started having this conversation about him, I'm just like, I'm so sick of hearing about Kyrie. I don't care anymore. He's just not worth it. And what really bugs me is Kevin Durant got pissed off at the Nets. He's mad at the Nets at they won't give this guy a lot of money, even though he's shown nothing, no nothing but that he's all about himself. I don't understand. Durant, when Barkley made the comments about basically what Barkley said was Kyrie thinks he's way smarter than he is and he's better than everybody else. Well, if this quote doesn't say that, I don't know what it does say. And then Kevin Durant gets his panties in a bunch because the Nets won't acquiesce to Irving. Why should they do anything for Irving? And basically they were willing to let him walk.
Yeah, I'm usually all for NBA drama. I think it's great. That's what reels me back in, especially in the off season. But this is just starting to feel like a soap opera where every day these guys are coming out with a new opinion and a new direction that they're heading in. And I'm struggling to keep track, and I'm kind of just a little bit not sick of it, but it's just starting, like, every time I see a notification on my phone that says anything KD or Kyrie, I'm just like, where could we be taking this today? I'm taking all of this with a grain of salt. None of this is probably true. And these guys just live in their own little world, it seems, right now.
I mean, the reporting was true. It's just annoying. It's just annoying. It has to be in the news again. I mean, this guy couldn't keep his name out of the news if he tried. He just gets in the news because of who he is and how he acts.
I mean, Kyrie is not good enough to be worth this headache, in my opinion.
Right.
The man is quite possibly the most overrated player in the NBA. From a complete playing standpoint, I'm. But
isn't it doubly annoying? Isn't it doubly annoying that anybody who criticizes him, Durant gets all upset and is like,
absolutely. But I just think like he has never had success as an individual player. Every team he has left has done significantly better. In a pretty short period of time, they've been able to recover after his departure.
Well,
Kyrie is.
What about that one final though? What one finals though with Cleveland? I mean.
Where LeBron, but again, alongside arguably the greatest player of all time. He had some great games, but when you have somebody to like hold him accountable, I cannot. He doesn't defend. He's not really a willing passer. He does make, but he takes tough shots. He's not that big. He's not a freak athlete. He's a great player, but the notion that he should be able to hold an entire franchise hostage time and time again and just lie and not have any. I'm just like, dude, you're not that good. You are not Kevin Durant. You're not LeBron James. You're not Steph Curry. You're not that good. Your entire resume is thanks to LeBron James outside of a few All-Star appearances, which everybody makes the All-Star game.
Well, he might be as good as James Harden.
Sure. James Harden's up there as well and overrated, but at least
Right.
James Harden got to some Western Conference Finals and like, flamed out, but he like made some playoff runs. Before LeBron came back, the Cavs had what? 2 first-round picks in a row or something like that, or like in a short period of time. Horrible. I can't stand Kyrie.
I don't know.
But also, you go
I
ahead,
was going to say, I don't think that Cleveland's winning that championship without Kyrie.
Sure, but
No, remember,
they're also
he
for
was-
sure
I
not
agree.
winning it without LeBron. Like it goes both ways. You know what I mean?
but
They don't even
I
get
think
there without LeBron.
He needs some respect, at least in the league, for that. He played a big role in that championship.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And apparently that's why they split ways, because he felt like he wasn't getting enough credit, but for what he accomplished in that one year. Now, unfortunately, what you did, how long ago was that?
It's the same thing as the
7
Boston
years
Celtics.
ago?
The
Right.
Celtics who milked that 08 championship. And I mean, like, I love Kevin Garnett. They're all Hall of Famers, but they talk like they won 7 in a row. I'm like, you guys won 1, made a super team, and then got disbanded by LeBron. Like, let's please stop with one of the greatest teams of all time. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's silly. That's silly. Okay. So do we want to answer Courtney's question? I mean, basically, I guess he was asking, is he going to end up somewhere else and with one of the teams that he wanted to go to? By the way, if he ended up on the Sixers with Harden, oh my God, I would just have to jump off a building. And,
Don't torture yourself like that, Rich.
but I would say I don't see. I mean, he would have to be. Well, I mean, they just. Yeah, I don't see how. I mean, it seems like he had the chance to work out a trade, didn't happen, so he opted back in.
I think my favorite thing to do, though, would be let's just swap Kyrie and Russ straight up, and let's see Russ and KD play it together again. That would be one of the funniest, greatest things to ever happen in
You
basketball.
are an agent of chaos, Connor. You are an absolute agent of chaos.
Wait a second. Now, wait a second. Who do you think would benefit? Who do you think would benefit from that? I think the Nets would benefit from that.
Yeah, I don't think this is the Thunder fan talking. This is the Russ Westbrook, my favorite player of all time, talking. But I don't think Westbrook's as bad as he's been made out to be in LA. Because, like, in OKC, I watch all the OKC games. He airballs a few times a game. Like, he has those bad moments, but because he's in LA, everyone's watching him, and every little slip-up he does, it's going to get posted on every social media outlet. And then, he's being used as a scapegoat, like, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if he needs a new change of scenery, I still don't know how hypothetically he would be with KD again, but it'd be fun to watch nonetheless. It'd be so fun to watch.
Actually, when I think about it, I think the Lakers would be better with Kyrie, and I think the Nets would be better with Russ. I actually think both teams would probably benefit. I'm not saying that either of them are winning a championship. I just think they'd be better off.
I think KD would demand the quickest trade in NBA history as soon as Russell Westbrook was just heading to the airport towards Brooklyn. He'd be traded before Westbrook landed in Brooklyn.
Wow.
It's just my next chapter with a Colorado Avalanche logo on him. That's what would happen.
Hey, let's get him on some skates, see what he can do. What's the worst that could happen?
All righty. So that takes care of one mailbag question before we even got to the mailbag. So moving on to the draft grades, we're going to stick with the teams that we all picked our mocks for the main evaluation of that player. What we're looking at here is total talent acquired versus any associated costs, such as a trade. Also, we're looking at opportunities lost, such as you passed over this guy and you took this guy. We're also looking at probably to a lesser extent, but some future value gained being via the trades. But we're only concerning ourselves with the trades that took place around the draft, not trades that took place during the regular season or previous seasons, because that would make this conversation like impossibly complicated. So, for example, New Orleans had the 8th overall pick, this year because of the Anthony Davis trade back in 2019. We're not going to be getting into that kind of depth because that's kind of like a never-ending circle. So, Drew, you had Atlanta, and they came away with 2 picks. They had AJ Griffin at 16 and Tyrese Martin at 51. And now they acquired that by trading the 44th pick with Golden State, which ended up being Ryan Rollins for cash. So, what do you make? What kind of grade are you looking to give the Hawks there?
This one was kind of tough because I don't think it was. I mean, I don't think they failed by any means in this draft. I don't think they knocked it out of the park. So I kind of sat at a straight B. AJ Griffin, we had 7th overall. I know in our mock draft, I think he took him in the top 10. So to get him, twice, farther down the line, I think is a great pick. It's great value. I also like Tyrese Martin from UConn. I think he had a really solid career, especially the last season where he was 43% from 3. So, I mean, I think the Hawks looked at it where when we had done our mock draft, I took Ty Washington for them because I felt they really needed a backup point guard to stabilize those non-Trae Young minutes. But I had mentioned Abaji had been in the discussion because they also needed defense, and 3-and-D guys are the bread and butter of the NBA. So I think they got 2 guys that could fit that 3-and-D mold really well. I mean, from just raw 3-point percentage, I mean, Griffin was at 45% almost, and Martin was at 43%. So they got 2 guys who clearly can shoot the ball, 6'6", at least at Martin. I forget what AJ Griffin's measurables are, but they're pretty comparable. So I think they got 2 guys that definitely fit in the NBA. And, if they can hit that 3-and-D archetype, they'll be super valuable. I just would have liked to see them get a little more point guard depth, because if they don't retain Delon Wright, they're going to have no backup point guard. And we already saw how bad those Trae Young resting minutes were. So they need to get that addressed. As a side note, I know in terms of undrafted additions, they added James Akinjo and Tyson Atine from Wichita, I think, to their summer league roster. So maybe they're looking at one of those 2 guards to come in and fill that void. But I gave them a B because I think they got great value for Griffin. And I think Martin, as far as the 51st pick goes, I think has as good a shot as any to get onto a roster and, have an impact. So not great, not horrible. I don't think they really addressed a major issue, but they didn't bomb it and go completely off the rails and do something crazy.
Okay. I agree. I agree completely. And they wouldn't have necessarily had to get a point guard who was a great perimeter defender, but if they could have used that first pick to get somebody who could play on the perimeter and be an excellent perimeter defender. And I don't think AJ Griffin, at least at this stage, is that guy. Right. He's much more offensive oriented. So what kind of grade are we looking at here? What would you?
I said B. I said B for him. Right, yeah. Right. Slightly above average. They didn't mess it up, and they got great value at the 16th pick. Yeah. So I give them a B.
Okay. I would agree. So moving on, we have Boston, which was Hugh's team, and they only had 1 pick, and that was late in the 2nd round. So they're not going to get a great grade because they only have 1 late 2nd round pick. But Hugh, what did you make of J.D. Davison going? The Celtics taking him at 53 overall.
I think J.D. Davidson's a pretty good pickup to get at 53 with a guy that probably is pretty low risk and has a high ceiling potentially. And so I think this is sort of definitely something we spoke about when we did the mock draft. I had them taking a backup point guard as well at 53, and that's what they seem to do here. I mean, J.D. Davison maybe is more of someone who wants to score and make more plays himself than maybe the Celtics might need right away. They probably just need someone who's able to steady the ship because as we've seen, they're a quality team already. But I think this is a really good get for late 2nd round. I mean, he's super athletic. The shooting still needs to come. But I think he has the potential to, if he can do a better job of taking care of the ball than he did at Alabama, being just a nice backup piece for Boston and hopefully someone that they can throw out there and sort of sparing minutes to spot Marcus Smart, and they can feel comfortable handling the ball, taking care of it overall, and getting guys shots in the right places. So he could be a good energy player off the bench for them. And I think, like I said, it's limited risk. They understand right now what they're getting, and they know that anything on top of that is going to be extra icing on the cake. So I think for 1 pick to come away with someone they can trust and hopefully become a backup point guard this next season, I think they've done what they probably hoped going into the draft. And so I think be able to get a guy that we had going in the 40s at 53 is pretty solid for Boston. So I also gave them a B.
Okay. The only thing I would say is about a B is I see what you're saying about that pick, that pick in and of itself to get a guy with his upside at that spot is great, but have they really changed the team here with the draft? Maybe a little. We probably won't know that. We probably won't know that for a couple of years. And there's a good chance he may never have an impact at all. So I don't know. B seems very generous, Professor.
I think B could be generous, but I think for a team that last season was the second best team in the NBA, it's always going to be hard to take that. The next step is to become the best team in the NBA. And so having the 53rd pick is going to be pretty tough to get a guy that's going to take you from the second best team to the best team in the league. But I think in this spot, I mean, I didn't think there'd be someone as quite as talented as JD Davison at 53. So I think that's why I was impressed that they were able to snag him up.
Right. Okay. So moving on, we have Charlotte, which I believe was that you, Drew?
That was me.
Okay. And so they ended up coming away with one of the picks we predicted, and that was Mark Williams at 15. And then they traded with the Timberwolves. They basically, they got this pick by sending Josh Minot at 45 and a second rounder for next year to move up 5 spots to get McGowan. It seems a little pricey to me. But yeah, because especially when, you could make the argument, is McGowan's any better than Minot anyway? I mean, he's definitely a little more proven, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I actually would have liked him to keep Minot because in our mock, I had them taking Sochan, and Mark Williams. And I think Minot isn't the player that Sochan is, but could kind of turn into something similar to that. So I would have liked the fit a little bit more. But I will say this, with recent reports, it seems like Miles Bridges may actually be leaving. There seems to be some contract issues there. So McGowan's fits more of the need of, we need a shot maker and a shot taker. Overall, I gave Charlotte a B as well. I was kind of between B, even maybe B+. They got the guy they wanted in Mark Williams. The reason I was hesitant was because they also had Jalen Duren, who I'm not super high on, but I think most people view as the best center prospect. So to give him up and go with Mark Williams from a pure prospect standpoint might not have been the right move, but they did walk away with 4 future draft picks, a first and 3 seconds, if I recall. So what was that? It might be 5, actually. It might be a first and 4, but regardless, they did get really solid compensation for Duren, still got the guy they wanted. And I agree, Rich. I think Bryce McGowan's is kind of a price to pay for him. He's just not that efficient of a player yet. But if Bridges does leave, they need shot makers and shot takers. And McGowan's is that. So I gave them a B. Again, solid draft. I don't think they messed it up. They didn't take anybody that was, so out of the blue. They got the guy that they were tied to, and they, added some future picks to the war chest. So I just think a lot of it depends on Bridges. Yeah. Four picks.
Now, did they was one of these? No, I guess this is their own second rounder that they gave up. But they ended up getting 3 others in the Duren trade. Now, I will say the first rounder they got in the Duren trade was a top 14 protected
from the Nuggets, right? Yeah,
and they gave up pick 11, so they're not going to get the same value there. So yeah, I think overall they did a good job, and I would say compared to Atlanta, they probably did a little better job.
Yeah, I was at B+. I just think when they got Duren, when he fell, I thought maybe, screw it, keep Duren. It looks like it's great. It looks like great value. It fills the need, but they really wanted Mark Williams, it looks like. So, at least they got something for it. They didn't do anything too crazy. They walked out with some prospects that are going to probably fit some sort of role right away.
Right. By the way, can we do some kind of Animal House-like thing when Hugh's not looking and break into the computer and change his grades? So next up, who had Chicago? Tell me, guys.
I also had Chicago.
Oh my goodness! So Chicago only came away. I only had 1 pick coming in. Didn't do any wheeling and dealing, and they came away with Jalen Terry. Now Jalen Terry, we've talked about a ton on the show, and he had been slowly moving up our draft board all season to the point where we had him right around this range. So what'd you make of his fit and this pick at that spot?
This was a hard one. I like the player. I don't like the fit. I think the Bulls have a lot of these kind of guards, versatile guards on the roster that aren't really scorers. They kind of do a little bit of everything. You have Alex Caruso, who's more of a defender. You have Lonzo, who's more of a playmaker, kind of a defender. You got, what's his name from Illinois last year? Dosunmu, who actually really played well for them. Mm-hmm. And then obviously you got DeMar, who they've been kind of moving all over the roster. But this was a hard one because I think Dalen Terry is a great pick. I just have no idea how he fits. And I think as of right now, he's probably your fourth best guard, at least the fourth guard you would trust with rotation minutes in a playoff team. So you took a player that doesn't really help. You needed some front court help. Now, and that's not to say if Levine comes back, what are you really going to do with Dalen Terry? How is he going to get minutes? So I like the player, don't really love the pick. I believe they added Justin Lewis as an undrafted free agent, which is probably really good, which is really good value. Two-way contract, which I think is really good value. But I was at a B- here. I think they got a good player. I don't mind, maybe a little high, but I just don't see how he fits with this roster right away.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have weaknesses up front.
Yeah.
They needed a shot blocker and they needed somebody behind Patrick Williams who really still hasn't proven himself. And they pick a wing, maybe a point guard. We're not sure what Dalen Terry is going to end up being. But next on the board is we're going to be talking about Cleveland, who ended up with a haul of picks. They had at 14, they had Ochai Agbaji. At 39, they had Khalif Diop, the center from Spain. At 49, they had a little bit of nepotism here, wouldn't you say? They picked Isaiah Mobley, Evan's brother. And then at 56, another surprise, they took Luke Travers from Australia, who didn't really stand out at the combine. So I was kind of surprised he stayed in the draft. So Hugh, what do you make of this haul of picks?
Yeah, I think Cleveland did pretty well with their haul and addressed a few different needs within the team. Definitely Agbaji is a great get to get him at 14. And I think he's going to be a really good off-ball scoring option for Cleveland. And especially being a guy that's been in college for 4 years, he's ready to contribute right away. We saw him perform at high levels in March Madness. And so I think he's ready. He's not a freshman coming up 1 year of college that the Cavs need to put a whole lot of time into. They can probably have pretty good faith and trust that he's actually going to give them some offensive versatility next season. So I personally am not as high on Agbaji as a lot of people, but I do know that he's going to be a really good player for the Cavs. And I think the biggest question for me is just regarding their depth at the shooting guard position. They have Isaac Okoro, who they're developing and putting a lot of trust in. And then they've also recently acquired Karis LeVert. Now, they only have him for 1 more year under contract, but I just think Agbaji could potentially have some challenge finding minutes around those two guys at the shooting guard slot. But at 14, I think he's a really solid player. He knows he can shoot the three really well. We watched that develop across his college career. And I think his defensive strengths will also help. Obviously, the Cavs have a really good defensive unit with Mobley and Jarrett Allen in that front court. But I think potentially with some of Garland's defensive limitations and size, Agbaji's a good player that they could throw out alongside him to cover up some of that potential defensive limitation. So I think that's a really good get, a guy that has proven himself throughout college, and we know what to expect of him at the next level as an off-ball shooter. And I think Garland's going to really enjoy having him on the court because Agbaji's an unselfish player and he's going to make the Cavs better. At 39, Diop, this was an interesting pick to me because the Cavs have such depth with their big men. We know that this guy Diop he's mainly a roll man, rim runner, but he's shot 62% from the field. He runs the floor really well and he's really good at playing in transition. So that's something the Cavs could be excited about in the future, is really picking up the pace with him on the floor. He, for now, is definitely a project player and definitely could be stashed still overseas. for
Yeah, I
a
think
year or two
that's
more.
the route. I'm pretty sure I read he was one of most of the international guys taken in the second round. Now I can't speak for Travers, but are going to be stash guys. I think the only two that are definitely staying are the 2 first-round international guys.
Yeah. So I think this is definitely a stash pick, someone that they could use as a backup big down the line, as just someone who can fill spot minutes and potentially play, roll hard, run the floor, rebound for them, protect the basket a little bit. So that was a good pick. At 39, though, I thought they probably could have got him later, maybe even at 49, where they got Isaiah Mobley, who I'm going to talk about next. So I was a little surprised by how early he went, but I'm not going to go against their decision making. I'm sure they have valid reason for that choice. At 49, though, I think Isaiah Mobley was a very smart pick for Cleveland. Not only is he a mobile, athletic stretch big, he can run the floor. He shot 36% from 3 in his 3 years at USC. He's a good rebounder. He's got 7'3" wingspan at 6'10". So he's got a good length. And I could see him playing the 5 in some pick and pop, stretch the floor 5 minutes, which could be really beneficial for the Cavs. But ultimately, when this pick came and we saw another Mobley brother going to Cleveland, we saw this as an insurance selection and something that the Cavs are playing the long game here, and they're trying to keep Evan Mobley, their young star, as happy as he possibly could be. So I think this is a really good idea for them at 49 to reunite the brothers in Cleveland. This is going to keep Evan Mobley really happy, and hopefully they plan to keep Evan Mobley for his whole career. And if that means keeping Isaiah Mobley on their roster the whole time, that's what the Cavs are going to be willing to do, because that's how special Evan Mobley is, and that's how much he proved himself in just 1 year already in the NBA. So this is a really smart pick for them. Not necessarily a guy that we're going to see as moving the needle for the Cavs, but more of a chemistry team player, keeping everyone happy within the organization. And I mean, I would love to see some minutes where both brothers are out there on the court together. That's probably something they've been dreaming of since they were kids. And to see Mobley at the 4 or Isaiah at the 5 and Evan at the 4, that would be a lot of fun. Even if it's just for 4 or 5 minutes of a game here and there, they probably have a bit of telepathy playing together for so long. So we could see some pretty exciting plays. And I just think the Mobley family has to be thrilled with this pick, both of their kids at the same place playing together. So that was a smart selection. And then the last player they got, 56th, Luke Travers from Australia, who we discussed a bit in the lead up to a draft. Didn't have the strongest combine, but this is definitely another project guy who may not stay in Australia, but I could definitely see him playing significant minutes for the Cavs G League team. Just getting opportunity to grow and develop. He does have really good size for a primary ball handler, 6'8" and 215 pounds. So I think he has potential to develop into a good influential wing player who can be a secondary ball handler if they want to get Garland off the ball, and someone who can he's a bit of a defensive mismatch, so he can play guard, switch a lot, get out in passing lanes, and he rebounds pretty well. So the 3 is definitely what he needs to work on, find some consistency in his shooting, whether that's still playing in Australia for another year or if that's on their G League squad. I think once he can get a bit more consistency shooting that 3 ball, then he could be a good off the bench energy guy for them who can run the offense, try and run the second unit a bit, play defense. So overall, I think given these 4 players, I think the Cavs addressed a lot of needs. They obviously got a young star and Abaji, who's someone we could think can be really good at the next level. And then a couple project guys, as well as a big who can keep a young star in Evan Mobley happy. So overall, I give the Cavs an A- for draft night. I'm happy to hear if you guys have any other opinions on what that grade should be, but I was pretty happy with how Cleveland came away with this haul. I
like the Abaji pick because, they're kind of a too big team, I mean, with starting a Coro, who you would really think is more of a small forward, and marketing at the small forward, you kind of think of him as more of a stretch 4. So this kind of allows them to play Abaji at the 2 and slide everybody over if they want. It gives them I think it gives them a lot of roster flexibility, whereas Sexton, is really kind of, about the minimum height that you would want from a 2 guard. But you can go that way too if you want to go fast. You could go with Sexton and Garland and Abaji at the 3, Coro at the 4. So you got a lot of flexibility here. So I like that pick. The other guys, I don't know if any of them are going to make it. I mean, you arguably say that Isaiah Mobley is no worse than Dean Wade, who's on the roster. In some ways they're very similar. Jop, some people really liked him and thought he was, like an early second rounder where he went, and some people didn't even, have him in second round range. So, but I think A-, B+, that's probably where I would have put them.
Yeah, and just one more thing I want to say with the brothers that just came to mind when you were speaking, Dan. I think a lot of people assume as soon as they saw Mobley drafted that, oh, this is like a Thanos for the Bucks for Giannis. But I don't think it's that whatsoever, because I do think Isaiah Mobley can have a good ability to contribute in the next couple of years. Not saying that Thanos can't contribute, but he's definitely more of an energy player. I think Isaiah Mobley has a bit more potential in the league. So I wouldn't say it's just a selection in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say Mobley, who we had 70th on our board, but we talked about this, when we were talking about Jared Roden and, where he kind of fell. And we kind of all agreed that anybody in between, say, like 50 and 75 on our board, what separated them was very fine line. So, I mean, like if you took somebody who was 55 on our board compared to, say, somebody at 70, there really wasn't much of a difference, so you probably want to go for fit. And of course, Mobley is a nice fit, not just because of his brother, but because when you look at, in the front court after Evan, after Jared Allen, there isn't much. So except for maybe Kevin Love, and we know Kevin Love, is near the end. So, yeah, that wasn't a bad pick. The only thing is getting him at 49. That seems a little, early, but yeah, just a tad early. All right, so
Connor, what you got?
I was going to mention him being at 49. With the Cavaliers having picked 56. Them taking Mobley at 49 makes me believe that maybe a team in the 50s was maybe eyeing Isaiah Mobley, and that's why they took him at the 49 spot instead of 56. That's just my theory. They could have just wanted Travers as well, but that's why I think they took him at 49.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right, so next team we're going to talk about is Dallas, who originally included their pick 26 in the trade to get Christian Wood. And then they got back into the draft by trading two future second round picks for Jaden Hardy at number 37. Hugh, what do you make of that one?
I'm back on the clock with Dallas. And as a Mavericks fan, I was doing my best to be unbiased and not give them an A++ for getting Mr. Hardy in the second round. But I think this is a really smart move by the Mavericks because, like we said, didn't have any picks coming into the night. Obviously, they'll be really happy with getting Christian Wood, and they'll be fine to send that 26 pick away. But I think they probably saw Hardy slipping, and potentially as the second round began, knowing that Hardy was still on the board, they said, who's the team we can call up and they're going to give us some picks and we'll be able to get out in the running to pick Hardy here. And they said, let's speed dial Sacramento. I'm sure they had the Sacramento Kings on speed dial at this point. Mark Cuban's like, let's just fleece Sacramento right here and do something that's good for us. And they sent a 2024 and a 2028 second round pick to the Kings in exchange for pick 37. So they must have been thrilled that Hardy was still there because, to be honest, I think this could be a bit of an insurance pick for them as they enter an off season where they could potentially be losing Jalen Brunson. Now, I'm not saying Jaden Hardy is anything what Jalen Brunson is right now, but I think if Jaden Hardy pans out like we hope he can, he could potentially fill that secondary scoring option that the Mavs had so much success with alongside Luka Doncic. So I think this was a pretty good pick. I mean, he was the last guy in the green room, and he didn't seem so thrilled to be falling into the second round. You could see him sitting there. He still looked great, but his face wasn't really looking the same. But he's a bucket getter, and he does make some boneheaded plays, as we saw in the G League. He still needs to work on his decision-making and making the right pass in the right places. But averaged 20 points per game against grown men in the G League last season. Did have 3.5 assists per game, but he needs to begin to shoot the ball more consistently, and he needs to turn the ball over a bit less. But I do have the belief that Dallas could be doing a nice thing here and replacing someone who could be leaving pretty soon in this offseason in Jalen Brunson. And hopefully in a couple of years could fill that role if Brunson is gone. So I give Dallas a B- for draft night, just because, I mean, some people might be like, look, they got 1 second round pick. How is this a B-? But I think going as a team who entering draft night had no picks and now coming away with a guy who 1 year ago was a projected lottery guy, I consider that a win for the Mavs, and only giving up 2 second rounders in 2024 and 2028. I think this is a B- grade for the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah. That would fit in line with how we've been grading, and I mean, it's a really good find for them. Nobody expected him to fall this far. I mean, this is a guy that was considered a lottery pick, not too long ago. So,
and I think Hardy should be happy going to Dallas. Like, he could have ended up on a team as the third guy they picked in the draft, and could have been a bit of an afterthought and could have been a challenge his first couple of years. But as the only guy that Dallas is bringing in out of this draft, he's going to get a lot of importance placed on him. He's going to get a huge amount of looks in summer league, and I think going to a team where he's the only selection is a good thing for Hardy, especially seeing as he fell to the second round.
Yeah, and he's probably going to get a standard second round contract with some guaranteed money, for a few years. So next up is Denver, and that's Cam's team. They ended up with 21. They selected Christian Brown. At 30, they took Peyton Watson, which was a pick that they acquired through the JaMychal Green trade. And at 46, they traded back into the draft to get another pick. And they got Ishmael Kamagate, and what they gave up was an exchange for that was I guess they just gave up a 2024 second round pick, which seems not much of a cost to give up for Kamagate. So, Cam, what do you make about what the Nuggets did?
Yeah, honestly, I was really confused by this draft for the Nuggets.
I was too.
They gave up real value to get that pick 30, and they took, and in my view, like, this draft for them was about grabbing some young guys that are ready to play right now. And I'm not sure if they really did that at all. I like Brown. I think he can contribute as a bench player, but he can't really shoot right now, at least not consistently, and maybe not the kind of consistency that you want for somebody that's going to be playing off ball, getting passes from Jokic, and is going to have a heavy diet of open threes. And honestly, I thought they could have probably gotten him at 30. I'm sure there was somebody that was eyeing him in that range, but if you miss out on him, you've got other options, especially if you get somebody with maybe a little higher upside at 21. So I thought that was a weird pick. Peyton Watson, we talked about him in the mock draft, and this is a guy that could be, a total miss, or could be, one of the better guys in the class, but there's no way of knowing. And taking him at 30 is kind of a reach in, I think, our general opinions. But I do like the Kamagate pickup. You kind of get a replacement for JaMychal Green, who you traded away to get Peyton Watson. So it's just an odd draft. I was expecting them to do something more like what Memphis did, go and get some young guys that are ready. I would have even loved Roddy here at 30 or 21, which is kind of the range that he ended up going. I don't know, just a strange draft for the Nuggets.
I agree. And, when you look at, let's say, we talked about Jovic, and it wasn't just because he was Serbian. We talked about, the potential fit that he had. They could have had him at 21 among a lot of other players. I agree. Brown is somebody, I thought would go toward the end of the first round. Watson was somebody I thought would probably go in the middle of the second round. Kamagate is the only guy they got where, I thought that was about where I expected him to go. And Watson would seem to be, light years away from being ready. Kamagate, as far as I know, is staying in Europe. And so, what you're left with is Christian Braun. And and to me was a borderline first round pick. So I'm not impressed. They may have come away with basically no one in this draft.
Yeah. The thing that really irks me about it too is that they've kind of given up on adding more playmaking around Jokic. You're pretty much betting entirely on Jamal Murray coming back 100% and being like that borderline all-star guy again. Because outside of Jokic, there's no single guy that can produce points on his own. So I think that's weird. Connor, what you got?
Yeah, I agree.
I know there's upside with Peyton Watson, but I can't justify spending a first round pick on a guy who averaged 3 points and two rebounds. Like, you drafted Torrey Craig in the first round. I think that's probably my least favorite pick of the draft. But yeah, I like Kamagate and Brown, but I just wanted to say that about Peyton Watson. I think that's my least favorite pick of the draft. Because Rich, like you said, the Nuggets are trying to win a championship in the next few years, and Peyton Watson is going to be nothing but a roster spot for at least a couple of years. And he's not close to being like a rotational player on a contending roster. So I think that one's confusing, but maybe we look back on it in a few years and Watson reaches his potential. He's a great player, but I think that's my least favorite pick of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't crack the lineup at UCLA, so how the hell is he going to crack the lineup in Denver? And UCLA was a team, that was hampered by injuries all year. But he couldn't do better than I think it's Drew can help me here, but I think it's Jalen Clark, who's a very similar player to Watson on the UCLA team. So he was the one who got the preferred time usually. And, what I do like about Watson, if he ever comes around, is, he could play the 4, he could play the 3, maybe even the 2 if he can shoot. But, all right, we're beating this one to death. So who had the Pistons? Who had the Pistons? Pistons?
That was me, Rich.
Okay. All right.
Compared to the Nuggets, I loved what the Pistons did on draft night. They got Jalen Duren for a steal, honestly. And finally kind of getting that big guy up front that is on the same timetable as their young core and has the upside to continue to grow with Cade Cunningham. Love that pickup. And they only gave up a couple second rounders and a future first, right? That was about it. But the biggest steal of the night was getting Jaden Ivey at 5, I thought. We talked about him going 3 in the mock, and he's an athletic freak. He can shoot, he can score, and fit wise, the question with Ivey is that he's not necessarily a point guard, but you don't have that concern in Detroit with Cade. It's perfect. You got a guy that can guard point guards and is going to be able to play off the ball and be a secondary playmaker. I thought it was a perfect draft for Detroit.
I agree. I love it. So what grade? Oh, go ahead, Hugh. I was just going to ask what letter grade Professor Real is giving out here, but go ahead, Hugh.
I was just going to say, how much better do we think Jaden Ivey is now going to be just at Sacramento past him? He has to be. That has to up his
first ballot Hall of Famer incoming.
Yep. And he probably wouldn't have even made it to a second contract if Sacramento had gotten him. Rich, I think it's an A+ for Detroit.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
They let one of the best players. They kept it pretty simple. You just take Ivy at 5.
Right.
And the move that they made for Duran was really sharp. Like they didn't give up a lot. I don't know what the Knicks were doing, trading for him and then trading him away.
Yeah, because if they keep him, they don't have to bother signing Mitchell Robinson, which saves them who knows how much money. And
they get a young player that might actually turn into something good. Versus like the Knicks are currently trying to figure out if RJ Barrett's even worth a max contract. And Tibbs is still not even playing Obi Toppin, so I don't know. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, man.
I think this is a really great way on how you rebuild. You don't sit there and take the Peyton Watsons of the draft. You go, I'm getting guys that are going to contribute. Now, they had good picks. Like, they were up higher, obviously, than 30, but like they went and got guys that are going to be good. They might not be all-time great, but these guys are going to be good in the NBA instead of trying to take the swings and the misses.
But just compare that to Denver. Detroit gets Duran at 13. Denver gets Christian Brown at 21. Just 8 picks separating those two.
Sure.
What's going to ultimately separate those two on the court is going to be light years.
I just think like there's times when we look at Peyton Watson as an example, and we're going to get to the Warriors in another minute here in their draft. But like sometimes I just feel like there's a proven contributor ready to help and do something instead of the guy who Peyton Watson's an athletic freak. I watched him play, and every once in a while he would do something that I was like, damn, that is an NBA athlete. And then he'd do something that'd be like, and that is a 24-hour fitness rec league player. Like it swung so aggressively. I just think that like this is how you rebuild. You make trades for guys who are going to help. Jalen Duran has a defined role. He's a project, but he is also going to be a great rebounder and rim protector at worst. So
right. Yeah. No, I was totally agreeing with you. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Cam.
But yeah, not only that, but they're drafting guys that fit their plan. Like I feel like you watch Orlando, and for years they've just picked, this guy is 6'10", he could be good. Like their team has no cohesion whatsoever, and they wonder why they're still bad. Like the Pistons picked 2 guys that fit with their star and have room to grow. Like it makes sense, and I think Houston did the same thing. It's nice to see bad teams that understand how to get good. It's awesome.
Right. So moving on, speaking of taking 6-foot players, 6'10" players, just because they're 6'10", we'll move on to the Golden State Warriors. And at 28, they took Patrick Baldwin Jr. At 44, they took Ryan Rollins. Both guys have injury concerns. And then at 55, they took the Brazilian Luka Doncic, Gui Santos. So what do you got, Drew, for your home team?
I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't like his draft at all from the Warriors. Like, not at all. I think people around the Bay were thrilled because they remember Patrick Baldwin from when he was a really highly touted high school prospect, not when he was arguably the biggest disappointment in college basketball. Patrick Baldwin, for me, for a normal team that was, maybe this was their second, maybe even third pick in the first round. They weren't just coming off a championship and preparing to try to defend said title. I get the pick. There is potential there. But for me, the biggest issue is the players that they missed and passed on. They passed on EJ Liddell, who not the same player as Draymond Green, but I got could be a Draymond Green-esque offensive player, knows how to play, great athlete, can score a variety of ways, knows how to be a complimentary piece. They passed on Andrew Nembhard, one of my favorite guys in the draft. They need a secondary playmaker. The more I watch Jordan Poole, the more I realize he is a 2 guard. He is a scoring guard through and through. His assists are kind of the cheap, just dump off pass or kind of kick one out. It's not playmaking for other people. And they also passed on Koloko, who we all like, and they need a big. I think Wiseman has insane potential, but it's going on year 3 and we haven't seen it. Koloko can come in and give them legitimate size, some switchability from a big, and some legit rim protection and rebounding. Even if he plays behind Kevon Looney, he is ready to help play. Instead, we took a guy that in 5 years could be great, but in 5 years could be completely a bust and be like a non-factor. Ryan Rollins, again, injury concerns was my biggest issue, but also we have Jordan Poole. Why are we taking another scoring 2 guard? I mean, does he have a little bit of playmaking to him? Sure. I think he averaged close to 4 assists in college, but he's not a great 3-point shooter. It doesn't really seem like a great fit.
Suspect defender.
Yeah, like it seems like it's another Jordan Poole pick. And I feel like the Warriors got enamored with the scoring ability, but it kind of ignored the fact that I don't think he's a great fit. And then, Santos, like I haven't really seen him play. I don't want to be hypercritical, but again, we had him in 94 overall here at HP and we took him at 55. So draft and stash for sure. Maybe he turns into something, maybe he doesn't. So that pick I'm a little bit indifferent to, but I'm not a fan of the first 2 picks that we made. We could have had guys ready to contribute. We are paying a huge amount of money for this roster, so improvements have to be made on the margins. So sure, if we retain all of our players from this year, which could happen in theory for a $500+ million bill, sure, maybe these guys don't really matter, but it's more so the players we passed on than the players we took. I really think there were 3 guys, Nembhard, Koloko, and Liddell, who were ready to contribute, could do so at a high level, have all played 2 or more years of college basketball, performed on the biggest stage. Just go down the list. And instead we took a guy that in every aspect from the combine to his college career was bad. Like he was objectively bad. Can't get behind it. So I'm giving them I would say C at the best. I was even at one point at a C-. That seems a little harsh. So I think a C. I think the Warriors get a C. Great potential picks, but we are contending. We are not rebuilding. Give them a C.
Okay. Can't argue with you. I was disappointed in their draft. Will be interesting to see what Santos does. I hope he moves from Brazil to play like in Spain or Italy.
I would love to see him come to Italy or Spain.
Yeah, where he would play against much better competition and be able to develop better. Cam, did you have comments? Hugh, you have comments? Cam, go first.
Be easy on me, guys, please.
I got a swerve, and I actually thought that the Patrick Baldwin pick was perfect for the Warriors. And I actually got viscerally scared when they picked him because I just thought they were going to pick some dude that was going to contribute right away, but they took another project guy. And this is the team with probably the best player development, like pool, it scared me. And I just know now he's at least going to be a rotation player. He's just going to be better Otto Porter somehow. It scared me.
I just want to say that I hope you guys saw the snippet when we got a look into the Warriors war room and we just saw Draymond Green standing up like an absolute menace, just peering over Steve Kerr's shoulder, peering over Bob Myers' shoulder, probably just giving him a little nudge. And I think that probably has a lot to do with why no Draymond replacement was drafted.
Exactly.
Said,
Baldwin's not known for his passing. Rollins is not really known for his passing. Santos is a pretty good passer, but he's not even going to be on the team. So next year.
Draymond wasn't allowing anything happening. He said, I like how it is right now. The Warriors are perfect. We're not changing anything. This is my team.
I will say this, Cam, I do agree with you. I've never doubted Bob Myers. He's yet to fail me. The Warriors do have great prospects in the fold. It was just one of those things where they were at. I just thought, you know what? We already have the high level we have the Moody, we have the Wiseman, we have the Poole, we have the Kuminga. Why don't we just they've played it like safe in the past with the Draymond Greens and the Kevon Looney's, a little bit more safer, a little more proven, and it's worked. So Cam's right. Patrick Baldwin in this system will find a way. I mean, he is 6'9", 6'10", can shoot, but I just thought, damn, I want to win a title next year. The parade was fun. I want to go back.
He will not find a way if he cannot stay healthy and improve his athleticism.
That's fair, but yeah, I give him a C. I thought they could.
And those are things. Those are things. No matter how good your development staff is, you may not be able to overcome. So,
sure.
All right, teams I picked for in the mock was Houston, and they did quite the job. They got at number 3. They took Jabari Smith, who we thought was the best player in the draft. At 17, they came with Tari Eason, who we had ranked as the 11th best player in the draft. And at 29, they got Ty Washington, who we had rated as the 16th best player in the draft. Now, I want to make a note of this when I talk about the Sixers, what the Rockets did here to get Ty Washington. They traded Christian Wood for pick 26 And then they rerouted that pick to Minnesota to not only get Ty Washington, but 2 future second-round picks. How do you do that? So that is just that's wheeling and dealing. I mean, that's just, they went around fleecing everyone. What do you have to say, Drew?
You just have to trade with the Timberwolves. That's all you have to do. It had nothing to do with Houston being smarter than everyone. It's the Timberwolves being dumber than everyone. But it was a great move. All joking aside, great move by Houston. Outstanding move.
Unbelievable. So, how do these guys fit in? Well, they fit in well. Jabari Smith will probably start at the 4. They needed a starting 4. They have been using guys like Dejounte and Kenyon Martin, and clearly Jabari will be an upgrade over those guys. Kenyon Martin is apparently on his way out of town because he doesn't really like how the draft worked out. And he wants to go somewhere where he can get more playing time. And you might say, well, why doesn't he back up Jabari Smith? Well, they also drafted Tari Eason, who is going to, who definitely could match Jabari Smith on the defensive end. He's a little more of a small forward type than he is maybe a power forward type, but he definitely can play at both spots. He has some real promise as a ball handler, though right now he does tend to get out of control, but this is new to him, at least at the college level. His first year at Cincinnati, he was basically used like a traditional big, and then at LSU he was given some more flexibility, and you could see a lot of promise there as a ball handler. And then you have Ty, who would now, with John Wall on the way out, I would say Ty is the best pure point guard on the team, though he too played a lot, most of his time at Kentucky at the 2 guard. But I think Kevin Porter's he'll back up. Ty will back up Kevin Porter, and so I think this will be a nice fit for Houston. And as we said all along, that all of these guys, they got further down in the draft where we expected it, and most people expected these guys to go. Connor?
Yeah, a few podcast episodes ago, I talked about Ty Washington being one of the better playmakers in the draft, and I think this is one of my favorite picks in the draft. Ty falling to 29 is actually like insane, because I don't know why he fell that far, but when in that episode I was talking about how Ty Washington, for him to be one of the best playmakers, he needs an offense that has shooters around him, and where he can, he's the point guard. He's not a secondary playmaker. And I think that's exactly where he is in Houston. I think Houston's going to realize Kevin Porter Jr. is not the point guard of the future. And he's just not a point guard. I don't think. So I think Ty Washington sliding into that like pure point guard role for that team is going to be really good, especially because Jabari Smith shoots the lights out of the ball. Tari Eason can shoot. Jalen Green, a great shooter. I know like Sengun's not, but even then you can run pick and rolls and just have shooters on the wing. I just think Ty Washington is just such a great pick for them. And like you mentioned, the way they got him was just really a steal from Houston's front office.
Yeah, to not only grab him, but grab a couple picks too. It's just insane. So next up is another team of mine, and that's the Pacers. At number 6, they got Ben Mathurin. At number 31, they got Andrew Nebhard. And at number 48, they got Kendall Brown. Another very good draft. By the way, I would definitely give the Rockets an A+, maybe an A triple plus. Now, with Indiana, I wouldn't give them necessarily an A+, but I still think this is a very good draft. Ben, fits in nicely. He would fit in nicely anywhere. But, he could play the 2, he could play the 3, he can even be a secondary ball handler. And we know that Malcolm Brogdon is probably on his way out, so he will add to the depth that they need at the wing and guard. And then you have Nebhard, who will probably directly slot in. Well, maybe not immediately. He might defer to TJ McConnell, but eventually I think he's going to be their long-term backup point guard. He's a very high floor, low ceiling type of guy, very safe pick, who improved his stock throughout the draft process. And then we have Kendall Brown, who just about everybody projected as at worst an early second round pick. And they get him at 48, and he gives them much needed depth and size to play at the 4 spot, which is definitely Indiana's weakness. So I think Indiana, was hoping probably to get Keegan Murray here, but the Kings surprised us by taking Murray at 4, and we expected Ivy to go 4, Mathurin to go 5, and then Murray to go 6. So this is kind of a fill-in there for that pick. Is Kendall Brown Keegan Murray? No, but he still has a good amount of upside, and so I think this was a very good pick as well. So I would definitely give, if we're giving out A pluses to Houston and Detroit, I don't know. I'd give these guys maybe an A-. What do you think, guys? I saw somebody had their hand up. Oh, Drew.
Yeah, Rich. I mean, we all know I love Nembhard. I think Mathurin is one of those players that kind of got lost in the fold in this draft because you had the big 3 freshmen and Ivy were kind of like the class of their own. And I agree. I think Ben Mathurin was the 5th guy. That's who I would have wanted 5. I think he's just ready to contribute on ball, off ball. He has the tools to become a good defender. Like, I just think he's a complete basketball player who needs just to be refined. Doesn't need to add anything. He just needs to refine what's already there. I think Indiana, and maybe, you guys can jump in here, they might have, Malcolm Brogdon's still on the roster. They might have the best guard rotation, the deepest guard rotation in the league now. I know there's a lot of young guys there, but you have TJ McConnell, Malcolm Brogdon, Duarte, Ben Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, and Tyrese Halliburton.
And Buddy Hield.
They have 7 deep guys who I think are all legitimate, either straight up starters, maybe even up to the all-star tier, possibly like in a Halliburton, to guys who I think are some of the best backup point guards in the league. So I'm really excited to see what they do because they're going to have to trade people, obviously. I think they're going to get some really good – I hope they get good value back because McConnell, Brogdon are definitely the type of players teams need, and they just drafted guys who can replace them. I think Indiana's in a good spot. Their guard rotation is great, and I think they're going to get some good value because everybody needs a backup point guard.
Buddy Hield, a.k.a. Mookie Blaylock. Cam?
Yeah, I got to put in Ben Mathurin as my candidate for irrational confidence guy of the draft as well. I don't know if you guys saw this quote, but Mathurin actually said this on draft night. Somebody asked him about LeBron for some reason, are you excited to play against LeBron? Obviously. But Mathurin said he's gonna have to prove to me that he's better than me. That is the most confident rookie I have ever seen. And
that's incredible.
Just because of that. It's beautiful.
That's Allen Iverson like confidence.
That's just pure adrenaline coursing through his veins saying that.
Yeah, he also has a crazy story. The guy speaks like 5 different languages. It's pretty cool.
He's from Haiti, went to the basketball NBA Academy in Mexico City.
Canada too. He was in Canada for a bit, I believe.
Right,
yep.
Right. He's Haitian, but I think he's a Canadian national. So he's been all over.
I heard he's really good at guessing how many basketballs you can fit into a room as well. Inside joke, people, don't worry.
No, it's actually not an inside joke because I think they talked about this on TV during the NBA Combine. But we were talking about interesting questions that prospects got asked when they were being interviewed by teams. So, and that was one of the questions that was asked by one team, which was guessing how many basketballs could fit into a room.
Definitely, Indiana had to be asking that question. that was Rick Carlisle's first and only question in the interview process.
It's all about spatial awareness. I want a point guard that understands space.
As opposed to one who's in space.
Yeah. Yes,
right, exactly. So next up is the Clippers. And Hugh, I believe that was your team, sir?
Yep.
All right. And they took at 43 Moussa Diabate, who I called in our mock draft write-up, I called perhaps the most underrated player in this draft class.
Yeah, Rich, I know you have a lot of faith in what Diabate could become, and I believe the Clippers probably feel the same way. We all know that the Clippers right now are an incredibly deep team, and probably going into the draft, they didn't see any holes they needed to fill right away within their roster just because of the talent they already have on that team. So I think Diabate is a really good pickup in at 43 near the middle of the second round as a good development piece. He doesn't necessarily move the needle right now. He definitely needs a lot of polish on his offensive game, but he has a developed body, a great athleticism to be a wing at the next level, and has the tools to be a defensive standout. So he played a lot of power forward his freshman year at Michigan, and I think probably in the NBA he could potentially, and they probably hope he could become a three. But like I said, the Clippers are incredibly deep, and they have a pretty old veteran type of roster. So I don't see Diabate getting much time at all this coming season. And he doesn't really move the needle for the Clippers at all right now as a team that, if healthy, has championship aspirations. But he's a valuable asset to develop and work on, and could see significant time in the G League working on his game. And I think 3 or 4 years down the road, I think you really could be right, Rich, and he could be someone that we were talking about is how did he go at 43 in the second round, because he could be the 10th or 12th best player in this draft.
Great. Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far, but most people had him rated in the 70s, and we had him rated in the low 40s.
Yeah, and he went 60th on our mock. But after I read your comments on him and heard what you had to say, I did a bit of research and watched some of his game, and he is super raw. And I mean, he's young, so there's plenty of room for growth. And I think hopefully he can learn from some of those veterans that the Clippers have and get a really good, developmental role within that team. And I don't think anything crazy is going to be happening in 3 years, but in 5 or 10 years, he could be a really solid piece for the Clippers if he even is still on the Clippers at that point in time. So I think.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say my grade for the Clippers is a C+. It's a solid pick, a guy that they can develop, and a pick for the future.
Yeah, and you talked about him possibly going to play the 3 spot. I'm thinking he might possibly go play the 5 spot. He's 6'10". I think he's 230, 220, somewhere in there. I could see him bulking up and still retaining a lot of that athleticism and becoming a rim protector. Right now, he played against alongside of Hunter Dickinson, who basically took up all the space in the paint on both ends of the court. So it'd be interesting to see what Diabate could do in the middle of the paint. So moving on, I believe, is this also your team, Hugh? Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to the less talked about Los Angeles franchise, the LA Lakers. They traded into this draft. Going into draft night, didn't have a selection. They traded $2.15 million to Orlando. So they traded just cash to get the 35th pick from the Magic. And with that, took Max Christie, the freshman out of Michigan State, who he's an excellent athlete. And I think he's still got a long ways to go before he's ready to contribute. But unlike the Clippers, the Lakers don't have depth. And so I think he has a much greater chance next year at actually playing some NBA minutes and the opportunity to prove himself, similar to what we saw Austin Reeves do for the Lakers this past season. I think Christie's going to get a chance to play some meaningful minutes for the Lakers. And if he performs well in those minutes, could find himself as a nice little bench role for this Lakers team. I mean, the shooting is where it needs to improve. He shot 32% as a freshman, and looking at his jump shot, it looks good. His jump shot looks good, but it just doesn't go in. So that, I think it just needs a lot. He just needs reps on reps on reps and probably a bit of confidence. And, the Lakers are going to be a tough team to do it in because, as we've spoken about, all the attention and the bright lights that franchise gets every single game. But I don't think this selection pushes the Lakers any closer into the running for the title, but it's a good developmental piece. And after entering the night with no picks and taking Christie and at 35 by moving into 35, I don't mind the selection for the Lakers. So this is another C+ for an LA franchise who is looking to improve significantly and find talent. And hopefully this can be a guy that pans out as a talented bench player that they can rely on in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you got the money, I guess I think C+ is a little generous because, Christie is really on the skinny side and on the young side. I just don't know how much he's going to be able to contribute right away. Cam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this pick just gave me like the image in my head of LeBron running into Rob Pelinka's office, like, Rob, I know exactly what we need. I've been thinking about it. We need to get into this draft. I got the perfect guy. And he didn't tell Rob who it was. He just kind of convinced him with his LeBron like mysticism. And so Rob trades for the pick. He's like, okay, Bron, who we taking? He's like, Max Christie. And Rob just looks at him like, fleece me again, Bron. Like, what? I don't understand it at all. Like, the one thing that they need is shooting. So they trade into the draft to take a wing, and the guy can't shoot. It makes no sense at all.
And they're taking a guy that, is young and skinny. I mean, he's definitely going to take some time. So, Connor?
Yeah, I love Max Christie as a prospect, actually. Like, I love his defense, and I think the shooting will develop over time. But I think this is the worst landing spot for him. Like, literally the worst. Like, the Lakers, like, I think, like, if I'm Max Christie and I found out I'm taken by the Lakers, like, I'm pissed. Like, I'm getting late GM is trading me in 2 years. Like, just genuinely, because the Lakers aren't a team where a young guy can come in and develop. Like, sure, he's going to get minutes, but he's going to get minutes. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Max Christie starts 20 games for them, to be honest with you, just how their roster pans up every year, like you said with Austin Reeves. Like, so I like Max Christie a lot as a player. I think this is literally the worst spot for him.
Yeah, he might be getting minutes that he's not quite ready for.
Yeah, and that's terrible for a young developing player.
And they passed over EJ Liddell. I mean, right now their backup 4 is Stanley Johnson. I mean, really?
They also passed on Kennedy Chandler.
Yeah, I was going to say Kennedy Chandler.
Right, but I mean, when you're talking about players that could contribute right away, Chandler was freshman, Christie is a freshman. EJ Liddell has got a man's body, and he's been playing high level for 3 years. I think C+ is very generous, Professor Baxter.
All right, mate. I mean, I'm willing to move that down to a C if we collectively agree on that. Drew, what do you think?
I was just going to say that I thought we were talking about my high school career for a second. You said he's tall, skinny, his jump shot looks good, but it doesn't go in. I was like, when did I get drafted by the Lakers? This is a throwback to when I was 16. But you guys actually, like, yeah, Cam, you kind of took it like the words out of my mouth. I was like, wow, this pick kind of came out of left field for me. Like, they came into the draft, and I was like, okay, like, I'm thinking they're gonna take Liddell. That's why I was like, they're gonna go get the proven guy who can come in and help. And they took Max Christie, and I was like, oh, all right. I'm like, this poor kid's gonna get scapegoated for something in 2 years. Like, AD's gonna break his ankle, and they're gonna think it was Christie's fault. Christie took out AD. And then the LA mob's going to be with pitchforks outside of his house. Poor kid's going to be shipped out to, like, the Shanghai Sharks, and we'll never hear from him again.
He'll probably go an average 30 for the Sharks too.
I was surprised I thought when I heard that they traded for 35, the first name that came to mind was Jaden Hardy. I thought that's who the Lakers are trying to get here, a guy that's sliding down, because I think Hardy's a guy that wouldn't be scared to play with the Lakers.
Yes.
He's a guy
that's a good point.
Would have been,
what?
Chandler cool.
Too. I mean, Chandler fits the positional need that they have. Like, they need a point guard that can shoot and pass the ball, and he can do all those things. And they
just took Max Christie.
Yeah. So
well done, Lakers, and couldn't happen to a nicer team. So moving on, Memphis, Cam, they came away with quite the haul, starting at 19 for Jake LaRavia, 23 David Roddy, 38 our boy Kennedy Chandler, and 47 Vince Williams. There was a little bit of surprise that Vince went so high. He was in that range of 55 to 75 that we thought could, fill in the last 5 to 10 picks. So what do you think, Cam? They got a pretty crowded roster now because they didn't have many free agents.
Yeah, Rich, there's definitely going to be some roster questions coming up for the Grizzlies, but I think this is kind of an indication that Tyus Jones is probably going to be on the move. They're not going to be looking to resign him. But I mean, what they were able to do with this draft, and they're just continuing to prove with the Grizzlies front office is an A-tier front office. They draft incredibly well. And I mean, that's like 3-4 seasons in a row now. We've watched them find gems in the late rounds and even in the mid-first. But I mean, we can kind of debate how much we love LaRavia. I know some guys really love him on our pod. I'm not a huge fan of LaRavia personally, but he definitely has some really great upside, and they're just continuing to add big wings that, can turn into something maybe with Zaire. And now they're adding LaRavia and David Roddy. I love Roddy at that spot for them, and as a fit, I think it's amazing. I was kind of surprised that the Sixers opted to trade him. And to be able to get Kennedy Chandler at 38 is a pretty shocking steal. Granted, he's 6 foot, but skill-wise, I think he's like a borderline lottery talent. And just to be able to replace a depth piece like Tyus Jones with such a promising young player is an amazing pickup. And I also love Vincent Williams. Like, I know when I was doing my personal board, I kind of compared him to Jalen Williams, kind of a similar prospect. He's not as good a playmaker, but he's probably a little bit better defender than Jalen is, and also a good shooter.
Good shooter, yeah. Good 3-and-D guy. I just question he doesn't have the athleticism of Jalen Williams. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, still at 47, like a guy that could maybe break the rotation, a little bit of a backup for Desmond Bane is a good thing to pick up that late. Yeah. I thought it was an awesome draft for them. I'm thinking like an A+ range. Honestly, I would consider even an A+. Getting to add more young guys to their core is a really awesome thing.
I have a couple comments on that, but I'm going to let Drew go first.
I know we've talked, like there's a lot of guys in this draft that I feel like could fit the mold of like steal of the draft. I mean, we even said Jaden Ivey. I don't think we saw him falling to 5. I know EJ Liddell was the big faller, but I think Kennedy Chandler legitimately is probably going to walk away, I think, the steal of the draft, because point guard is such an important position in the league, and having a point guard who can score, pass, is an explosive athlete, and you're adding him to a team that has a point guard who can score, pass, and is an explosive athlete, I think could actually be the steal of the draft. Like, I don't think statistically he'll be as impressive as some guys, but I could totally see Chandler's advanced metrics being really sharp this next year and like being a guy that can help push them over the top. I really like that pick. I mean, to get him at almost 40 and we had him in the top 20, that's a hell of a pick.
Yeah, I agree.
Underrated too, Kennedy Chandler's from Memphis. Right. Like, you're getting a hometown guy, played at Tennessee. Like, that's such a cool pick too.
Yeah, very much. When you consider their top 3 picks, they ranged on our draft board from 19 to 33. And they got those guys between 19 and 38. So the only one criticism I have is how they got LaRavia. They gave up Walker Kessler and Ty Washington. And I think in the long run, when you look at these guys' careers, I think it's going to come out that the Walker Kessler, Ty Washington end of that trade is, I'm not saying Jake LaRavia, even if Jake LaRavia is a good player, I think there's a good chance that at least one, if not both, Kessler and Washington are going to turn out to be good players. So you're giving up potentially 2 good players for one. And, if I had to pick, say, okay, out of those three guys, which one's most likely to become an all-star? I would say Ty Washington. So, and who knows, if Kessler proves to have, good foot speed, and can start hitting the outside shot, you might have an all-star there too. So, I really like Jake, and he was number 23 on our draft board. Had him going in the middle of the first round to the Bucks, but I just think they gave up too much to get him.
I agree. And
that's why I wouldn't give him an A+. It's because of that trade.
Yeah. And going off of what you said about Kessler too, I think the one like positional fit that the Grizzlies didn't address was that center role. Like in our mock draft, I had them taking Koloko,
right? Just
because I think Steven Adams is starting to get a little creaky, and they don't really have an alternative option for like a big traditional center. I think Kessler would have been a really good fit too.
Right. So next up is Miami. That was another one of my teams. They took Nikola Jovic, a guy we thought was headed to the Nuggets, but he went in between their 2 first-round picks. I think Miami got, this is, solid value. This is exactly where we expected Jovic to go, somewhere between 20 and 30. This was at pick 27. You definitely have a guy who has a lot of offensive upside, a wing type player who's 6'10", and as far as I know, he will stay in the United States. I just don't think he's probably not going to be ready to contribute right away. He's only 19 years old, but Miami definitely has a need for size. Especially if PJ Tucker leaves. So I think it's a good pick. I don't think it's blows you out of the water pick, but I think I definitely give him like a B- for that pick. Anybody think otherwise?
No, I think that's good.
Hugh has an issue with my grading.
Heat culture. This has to be the right pick. So that's all I'm going to say. It's heat culture, A+ pick.
I don't really see him being a Heat player because he's more of an offensive, he's kind of a flashy guy,
But that's what you think, Rich, and then you step in the door and the Heat culture hits you in the face.
Wow.
Actually, Pat Riley hits you in the face with his pen ring.
You just get an imprint of all these diamonds in his cheek.
I just wanted to say real quick too that like Denver fans were actually like viscerally disappointed that Jovic didn't get picked by the team.
Yeah.
Like I had so many people text me, my roommates who could care less about basketball were like, we didn't take Jovic, we didn't take the Jokic twin. Like it was a good pickup for the Heat.
Yep. So another one of my teams, the Milwaukee Bucks, they picked Marjan Beauchamp at 24, and they took Hugo Bassan at 58. I think Milwaukee, again, did a solid job. Beauchamp was somebody that we had rated somewhere between 20 or 21 and 30 all season. So this is exactly about where we expected him to go. And in our mock, we had them taking Laravia, thinking that they could use depth pretty much anywhere. And Beauchamp would seemingly fit the Miami mold of a long wing prospect who can defend. His offense is a question mark, but in Milwaukee, I don't think he's going to be asked to do that. He can come along, take some time to come along. The other pick, Bassan, who's a Frenchman who played in the Australian NBL this season, both last year in France, this year in Australia, he proved that he can light it up. He's a nifty ball handler, crafty scorer. Much like Jaden Hardy, he is not efficient. And so that's it. And unlike Hardy, Bassan's athleticism is questionable. So that's why he's at the very end of the draft. But for a 6-man type of candidate, a guy could bring you instant offense. He has very good size for a wing. So, I think he's worth the shot. And to my knowledge, he is staying in Australia, I believe, this year. So, or at least he's going to stay overseas. I don't know if he's going to stay with New Zealand. He might want to get out of there. New Zealand's not a very good ball club. But yeah. So I think this was a solid draft, not spectacular. And so I'd probably give them a B. Does that sound about right? Cam, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think a B is a really good grade. But to be able to pick up Beauchamp at their pick, I thought was awesome. And a guy that fits their team chemistry extremely well. Like we were talking about, like with especially Giannis, like somebody that came from pretty modest background, and Beauchamp is a really similar story. And I love being able to pick up a guy that like bet so heavily on basketball and managed to make it to the league. I think it's such a cool pickup.
Yeah, I think at one point he considered giving up. So there'll be a Disney movie made about him if everything goes to plan.
Yeah, we got to see him coming up.
So finally, we get to hear from Connor, who's had to languish through all our blabber. He had Minnesota, and Minnesota had a host of picks starting at 22 with Walker Kessler, 26, one of my favorite guys, Wendell Moore. 45, they had Josh Minot, who was actually acquired via a trade. And at 50, they had Matteo Spagnolo, who is, to my knowledge, going to stay in Europe for next year. That was also part of a trade. Or no, it wasn't. I'm sorry. Or was it? I don't know. Minnesota did a lot of wheeling and dealing. So I'll let Connor talk from here.
Yeah, I kind of like what Minnesota did in this draft. So they were originally slotted at 19, but they traded back, but also acquired the 26th pick in that flurry. So I think, trading 19 and getting 2 first rounders, I think that's fine value. My issue is Walker Kessler. I really like as a prospect, but not for the Timberwolves. I don't see him and Kessler and Cat fitting on the court at the same time. And I think that's really what they should have addressed. Because I think EJ Liddell's a guy we brought up a bunch about how, teams should have taken. But I think, and I took him in our mock draft, because I think he's just a perfect fit next to Cat. Kessler, I just don't see Kessler and Cat fitting on the same floor at the same time. And I think backup 5 is a need to address, but maybe not with their first pick in this draft at 22. I do, however, I really like the Wendell Moore pick. I think, he's a wing player, that forward that they kind of need. And I think I like his scoring upside a lot in the NBA. And also a guy who's not a one and done guy. He spent a few years at Duke polishing his game. And I really like that pick. Guys like Minot, I know he has upside. Another forward position guys I need depth. And Spagnola with the 50th pick. I don't really have an issue with him. I know he's going to be a draft and stash guy. I do have an issue with them trading the 48th pick, which ended up being Kendall Brown, because Kendall Brown's a guy I would really love to see with the Timberwolves. And I think the Pacers really got to steal with him at 48. I am a Baylor fan, so I'm a little biased, but genuinely, I think he would have fit really well with this Timberwolves team. So I gave him a B. I was leaning B-, but I think I'm going to give him a B because I really do like Wendell Moore. It's just Kessler's fit with the team. That's really my concern with them. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I was wondering if they would have taken somebody like Liddell at 22, and what about Koloko at 26? What would you think about that?
I think that would have been a great draft for them because Koloko's not a guy you expect to come in and start next to Cat. He's your backup 5, and you're really happy with him being your backup 5. And then Liddell's playing next to Cat. In that.
The reason I suggested it is because I actually think they could play together, because Koloko, well, no, you wouldn't want that either. Yeah, Towns presents He presents problems, doesn't he?
Because he plays like a 4, but he's too big to play at the 4.
Right. Defensively.
Yeah, guys. I gotta disagree on the Kessler fit. I think it's actually pretty encouraging for Minnesota. If you guys remember, like Towns actually played power forward in college, even. Like he's always kind of been a power forward. And I think he actually fits better as a forward. I know defensively they're gonna have issues, but when you got Kessler backing you up at the rim, I think Towns kind of showed some potential coming out and hedging screens, especially early in the year. Minnesota had a pretty impressive defense because they were just blitzing everything. They kind of fell apart later in the year because they couldn't keep up that pace and teams kind of started to figure them out. But I think if you've got Kessler in the drop, and you like if Cat can give you enough defensively on the wing, I think it's a really good fit.
I think switchability is so valuable in the NBA. I think the ability to have guys who can switch onto a guard for not the whole possession, but just for a little bit, I think that's so valuable. And with a lineup with Kessler and Cat, you can't do that at all.
I question Cat's motor.
Yeah,
I think that's my thing. I just don't know if he's going to commit to being like he's going to want to switch and be willing to do so consistently. Because like we see in so many, and we saw in the playoffs, one game he's got 35 and 13, and the next game he's got 12 and 6. I just question his motor. I think Kessler is going to fit because the skills he have are transferable and they're needed in the NBA. But I don't trust Cat's willingness to hop out on the perimeter if he has to chase somebody out on the perimeter and close out if he has to. So it's less about, I think, Walker and more about Cat. I think that's the issue.
Do you guys think that Minnesota's prepared to move on from Cat?
And the Edwards team?
I kind of wonder if they're moving in that direction because I think Edwards showed that he is that guy. Like he's the guy that they should be building around. And I don't know if he really fits with Cat. It's kind of odd.
Probably get if you get rid of D'Angelo Russell and Cat, you could probably get some value. I mean, you could definitely, there will be a team that's convinced Cat could be the 1A.
Oh yeah. Presti can throw over 11 of those things. Get Cat at the 5, Chet at the 4.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean the roster they have isn't gonna work.
I would agree.
Yeah, they scared the Grizzlies a little bit, but I think that just showed that the West was a little bit shakier than we thought, more so than it was like the Timberwolves just looked like this possible hidden championship team. Like Pat Bev bullied a team that has like one game of playoff experience, you know? It seems like they need to go in a different direction, and they have somebody really amazing in Anthony Edwards, and it'd be a shame if they don't capitalize on it.
Edwards definitely has that dog that Wiggins and Cat never had, and probably well, Wiggins has the dog now. He's got the dog in him now, but Cat's never going to be one of those guys. So yeah, I think maybe that is true. Maybe they're taking Kessler, thinking Cat's maybe not their long-term guy at the 5 or at the 4 or just on the team. So maybe that's a good point.
Alrighty. So moving on, another team of Cams, and this is New Orleans, and they didn't make any trades, but they still came away with 3 picks. At number 8, they had Dyson Daniels. At number 41, our boy E.J. Liddell. And at number 52, Carlo Metrakovic from the Adriatic League, a center, traditional center, basically. So what do you think, Cam?
Maybe somebody else could go into maybe a little bit more detail on Dyson Daniels. He just wasn't super high on my personal board, and I don't feel like I can give him a good rap. I like what they did with Liddell at 41. I think it's a really good value, and just another forward that you can kind of mix into your rotation for some depth. And I liked Makovich. I was happy to see him kind of sneak into the draft after the combine. And I think you got to think that ultimately they're going to be moving off of Jonas Valanciunas, even though he was a really good piece for them in the playoffs. But you kind of get a similar prospect in Makovich, who's just a kind of a bruiser and athlete. Another alternative for Hayes as you continue to develop him. So I think it was a solid draft. They didn't do anything special, depending how you feel about Daniels, but I'll let Drew maybe talk about Daniels a little bit.
Yeah, Kim, I think that this might have been the safest draft, at least in terms of taking Liddell and Daniels. I think the general consensus was Daniels was like the safest guy in the top 10, the guy that you're going to draft, who's going to have a long career and going to contribute in a variety of ways. And then we've talked about Liddell, ad nauseum, because he was the big faller, but he's a pro-ready player in a lot of different ways. And I think that is what makes this a good draft for New Orleans, because we saw them really hit their stride at the end of last season. They have a great young coach. They've got great young talent. They've got a veteran leader in CJ who can kind of, show them the way. And that was all without Zion. So I think this was kind of the way for them to go. They didn't need to take a gamble. They didn't need to take a risk. These guys are young enough to still grow alongside, Ingram, Zion, but I also think are ready to contribute now. And we saw how good their rookies did last year. I mean, you had, Grand Theft Alvarados, everyone was calling them, Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. And those guys, these are guys that kind of give me the same vibe as them. I don't think Dyson Daniels is ever going to be the best player on a team. EJ Liddell will never be the best player on a team, but they are going to be ready to contribute. And, Rich had me review Daniels a couple of podcasts back, and ever since, I've just liked him more and more because I think he's just pro ready. There's not a lot of, he's not an A+ player in a lot of things, but I think he's a B player in a lot of things. And this is a team that needs that, because I think they have a lot of guys who specialize in things. Zion's the freak of force down low. Brandon Ingram's kind of the go-to scorer. CJ's kind of the veteran, but, savvy, perimeter-oriented guy. Daniels can fill all the gaps that those guys have. And I just like Liddell. I think he's ready to go at 41.
I think the one comparison with Daniels that I do really like, he kind of reminds me of Lonzo Ball coming out of school. Like he's really he's a playmaker.
Sure.
He's maybe not going to be your best scorer. He's not maybe going to be your best shooter, but he does a little bit of everything.
He might be your best defender though on the perimeter.
I think his ceiling is Iguodala. I don't think he'll ever score into the 20s like Iguodala did, but I think he's ceiling in terms of just impact could be like an Andre Iguodala with the Warriors, maybe. Maybe like Warriors version of Andre Iguodala. Can defend, switch, makes the right pass, willing to rebound, can hit a shot, can score if absolutely necessary. He's not like a Draymond Green liability sometimes. I think that's his peak, is like a Warriors version of Iguodala.
Hugh?
I just want to say the only thing that we didn't touch on with Dyson Daniels is, and I think gets overlooked a bit already, is just how big he is. Like he's 6'8", and he's a point guard, and he's got great size, which I think we haven't acknowledged yet. And I think the league is going to notice pretty quick that having 6'8" running out as their point guard next year for New Orleans is going to be huge for them defensively.
And they don't really have anyone on that roster who can play the point guard and defend that has legitimate size. And he gives them that, because their other options are all small guys. And Daniels gives them something that they don't have already.
So what do we think about an A- for the draft?
Yeah, I don't know about if I give him an A.
I was going to say maybe B+ at the highest. I was going to say maybe B. Safe draft. They didn't mess it up. I think they did not mess it up and got better. So maybe like a B+.
So somewhere between a B and an A-, I would say.
I think A- to be able to get Liddell at 41 and Dyson Daniels for a team that was in the playoffs last year, to get these two guys as well as a third potential down the line. This is a pretty good draft for a team that's already a well-rounded unit with a good young coach.
I'm good with A-. If we want to go A-, I'm good with that.
I'd agree with A-.
And I mean, even Makovich, you're talking about a guy, he's got some potential. Like an athletic center. It's a good pickup late in the draft.
Okay. So next team on the board is mine, the Knicks, who traded away their first rounder. So that's something I guess we have to explore here. That was a 3-team deal. And so basically the first part of it was trading pick 11. Let's see. They sent pick 11 to the Thunder for three first rounders, actually, but all of them were protected somewhere in the range of 14 to 18. So then they turned around and flipped one of those picks in a 3-team deal ended up in Charlotte. So then they took pick 42 and acquired Trevor Keels, who is, call him a combo guard, call him a wing. He definitely has potential as a secondary ball handler, maybe even a primary ball handler. He's very solidly built, perhaps a little heavy. Didn't test out great at the combine and athletically because he's carrying some extra weight. But, he's a young kid, only 19 years old, and has potential to be a very good all-around player. Will he contribute to the Knicks anytime soon? Well, definitely not this year. I can't see it. Maybe a few years down the road. This is a guy that most people early on in the season, or maybe even at the midway point of the season, had him as a late first-round pick, but he kept on slowly dropping a little. So, we had him 36 on our board. He ends up going 42. So I'd say all in all, the Knicks did okay. It seems like, they acquired some picks for the future. They also got a prospect for the future who I think will probably stick. But they didn't do anything to help the team right now. So I would say they did okay, and I'd give them a C.
I just want to say, I just don't see why the Knicks don't want to get someone right now this draft. They're a young team who clearly needs help and needs talent. Why are they delaying the process of improvement?
Yeah, that's what surprised me too. They made the moves that you would kind of make if you were in rebuilding mode, and I didn't quite understand that either. The way it's been explained is it seems to be that basically trying to get rid of Kemba's contract to clear space for this upcoming free agency. So hopefully they can prove to us that this is all part of a grand plan in free agency. But yeah, I was confused to move away from the 11th. It was the 11th they had, right? It was at the 10th. Yeah.
I thought there was still plenty of talent, and this draft was deep at the top. So I thought at 11, they could definitely have got a guy that was going to contribute. The only question I have for you, Rich, is would you compare Trevor Keels to Desmond Bane? Because that's what ESPN expert analyst Kendrick Perkins said. And Desmond Bane was not so fond of that comparison on Twitter. So there's a little Twitter beef on draft night.
Oh,
do you see any truth in that?
I missed that. And, they're both kind of pudgy looking.
So is Kendrick.
That's about where, yes. That's about where the comparison ends. Keels can't shoot like Bane. But ultimately he might prove out to be a better defender. But he's got to get in shape. I'd say, and I think he definitely has more upside as a passer. But right now, yeah, I could understand why the comparison would not be well received. So they ended up basically sending Walker to Detroit, and then Detroit gets 13 from the Hornets, and the Hornets end up getting the Knicks one of those first-round picks that the Thunder set for pick 11. Okay, so that's how it all worked out. So basically what the Knicks did in that second part of the deal is basically they gave up a first-round pick to get rid of Kemba Walker, is what they did.
Yep.
Since the Thunder were so generous to send them 3 first-round picks, that's for one, is the Knicks could afford to do so. But I agree with you. I think ultimately taking someone like Duren and keeping him for themselves, if they're looking for if they're looking to be cash, if they're looking for cash, they could have saved cash right there, because they're going to have to sign Mitchell Robinson for probably at a minimum. He's definitely going to make more money than Kemba Walker. So I would say that Mitchell Robinson is probably looking at making about, $15 million a year. So why not take Duren? And then if you don't have the money to sign Mitchell Robinson, so be it. Between Duren and Nerlens Noel and whoever else, they have laying around, could probably, hold down the fort at center.
I just think the most disheartening part about all of this is hearing how their go-to free agent target is going to be Jalen Brunson. Like, you're going through all this, you're doing all these things that are questionable, and it's not like we're going to swing for Donovan Mitchell, we're going to try to pick up Bradley Beal. We're not going to jump in the Kyrie sweepstakes that, was supposedly going on. It's that Jalen Brunson, all of this seems to be to land Jalen Brunson. And I think he's exceeded a lot of people's expectations. I mean, he's become a really great player, but no way in hell is Jalen Brunson going to lead the Knicks to the promised land. So you're going through this whole process.
I agree.
And that's who they're talking about. Not Donovan Mitchell, not Bradley Beal.
Right.
Jalen Brunson.
Or Miles Bridges.
Or Miles, yeah.
This
it doesn't make any sense.
This is unprecedented for a guy who was a second-round pick to have one good year but didn't make the All-Star team. And the Knicks are talking about him like, they're trying to sign LeBron. They hired his father, blah, blah, blah. They've gone and watched him play during the playoffs, which pissed off the Mavericks. That they were like in the front row, and so yeah, you know what, the Knicks are right up there with the Kings and a few other teams when it comes to building an organization. So
yeah, it's going to be fun when the Knicks have to give up that Bucks pick for tampering next year. just to get Jalen Brunson.
Well done, sir. Well done. All right. Finally, we got Connor gets to talk again. We'll be talking about Oklahoma City, who came away with quite the haul, including two people with the same name. At number 2, they took Chet Holmgren. At number 11, they took Ousmane Dieng. At number 12, they took Jalen Williams, the wing/guard. And at number 34, they took Jalen Williams, the power forward/center. So, Connor, what'd you make of this haul?
So I really like this draft. As an OKC fan, I think I said this on a previous podcast, their biggest needs coming into the draft were size and shooting, and they definitely did that. Chet Holmgren, obviously, I think he's listed 7 foot, but like standing next to some other guys, he's definitely like 7'2". Ousmane Dieng, he's another tall wing. I think he's around 6'10". Jalen Williams is a guard, but he is a 7'2" wingspan. And then Jalen Williams, obviously, big front court guy. And I really liked what they did. I think Chet's fit in OKC is I think, honestly, the best for him. I know he wanted to land in OKC. I just think his ability to handle the ball at his size, shoot the ball, and be an elite rim protector. I know people question his build, and obviously he's going to have to he's going to have to put on some weight and put on some muscle to play at the 5 for sure. But I think you still want to, knowing how much skills and how much potential he has, I think you're willing to draft him knowing he has to put on some weight. Now Ousmane Dieng, we did give 3 first-round picks for him, but they're not great first-round picks, and we have like 20 of them. So I don't see, like, when I first got the tweet, it was like 3 first-round picks. And I was like, oh, we're not giving away 12. We're giving away highly protected picks. And also, we don't have the roster spots to sign those guys anyway if we did keep them. So I think that was a good trade for Ousmane Dieng. And apparently Cleveland was after him too. And for good reason. Honestly, his tools, he's one of those guys with a low floor, high ceiling. You can see him being like a Nick Batum, but you can see him being like a Paul George. And I think at 11, one of 3 lottery picks for them, I think that's a swing you're willing to take. And I really like Ousmane Dieng's game. And then Jalen Williams, HPP legend. He was a second round pick, did an interview all the way in the lottery. Love to see it. But genuinely, I do love that pick too, because he's a guy, he doesn't have a glaring flaw. He can really do a lot of things. 18-point scorer, almost 40% from three, great defender, great athleticism. And I really like OKC taking an older guy from the draft. They got their young talent, but let's take a guy, a polished college guy who's going to come in and help right away. And I think Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams, is also a solid pick. Definitely, he has a motor, high energy. I think he's going to provide a spark off the bench that OKC is definitely going to need when it gets late in the season, when we're starting like Jalen Horde 40 minutes a game. But no, I think OKC got a good haul. I'm going to give them personally an A grade. You guys can let me know if I'm a little biased, but I really like their haul.
The only thing I will say is I think three of these guys are almost definitely going to stick. The first three, I'm a little worried about Jalen Williams, the big guy, because of his lack of athleticism, but I love the rest of his game. But the main thing I would say is if you look at where we rank these guys on our draft board and where they went in the draft, OKC liked these guys better than we did. So if they're right, they got quite the haul. If we're right, maybe they didn't get as much value as they could have.
I think another team was also, it might have been Cleveland, wanted Jalen Williams at 14. So I do know that if we didn't take them there, we probably weren't getting them.
Right. Right.
Which that was a concern when we took Jalen Williams, because I love his game, but I was like 12. But no, I think where we got them is fine, considering I think other teams were looking at them too. Another concern with this draft, though, is we do have like 20 guys on the roster right now.
Yeah.
And like, you look at like the Derek Favors and the JaMychal Greens, like, sure, you can just trade them for like a late second and attach a second, and that's like whatever. But guys on the chopping block like Teo Maledon, like you had a valuable draft pick in Teo Maledon, and now you're probably gonna have to cut him. Even like Isaiah Roby, he's played amazing. He's played way better than we thought he would, but like at the end of the day, we're probably gonna have to make him expendable just to fit guys on the roster. And even like the rotation, like is Ty Jerome a reserve? Like, is he a bench warmer now after playing like 20 minutes per game? Just a lot of guys on the roster, but I think they'll figure it out.
Well, there's plenty of teams that don't have a full roster, so maybe they could swing something there. Maybe even like a 2-for-1 swap, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, to get a free up a roster spot. Cam, you had your hand up.
Oh yeah, I was wondering. I feel like we should at least address the fact that Paolo went 1 and that the order kind of flipped on us. And I was kind of surprised that OKC didn't opt to take Jabari. Like, I know that Chet was kind of their target, but I just think Jabari might kind of fits their roster better and maybe is more NBA ready than Chet is right now.
Well, Connor can my first thought is that, they wanted somebody to protect the rim.
Yeah. If they take Jalen, or if they take Jabari Smith Jr., your 5 spot is Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who I love dearly. He's like 6'8", and he's not a rim protector. He's good on defense as a switchable guy, but not really a rim protector.
I don't even know like 6'8".
I know at the top you're kind of thinking best player available rather than fit, but I think Chet Holmgren for OKC at least is probably kind of a combination of both.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree, actually, with what Connor said. Anything else, or should we move on to Orlando?
I just wanted to mention real quick that OKC totally fleeced the Knicks out of Ousmane Dieng. Like, they traded away a Pistons pick that there's almost no way is going to fall below 18. And, you get the Nuggets 2023 pick. That's a contending team. And I mean, really, like even the Wizards pick is probably not going to fall below 14. I don't know. It just kind of seems like the Knicks traded away a good player for a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, I think when in that moment in the draft, when we heard that trade was going through and that Ousmane Dieng was actually going to OKC, my jaw hit the ground when the 12th pick came around and it was also OKC picking. I was like, okay, who in New York taking at 12? They definitely just swapped 11 and 12 and some other stuff. And then to learn that OKC still had 12, that was an absurd moment for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when you find out that none of the picks they received were going to be as high as that don't even have the possibility to be as high as 12.
Yeah. I think this is what it's going to be from OKC for the next couple of years. They're just going to continue to flip these picks into exactly the guy that they want. And they're just going to throw so many picks at teams that they're like, screw it. I really like Scoot Henderson at 2, but you're offering me 6 picks for him? Cool. Like, I'll take the 6 picks.
I think next year, however the lottery pans out, the Thunder could get 1 and then whatever. But if they get like 3, whatever they do, I think Victor Wembanyama is their end game. And I think they're going to say, hey, we have 4 and then 15 first-round picks. We want Victor Wembanyama. We're going to roll with a 7'3" front court for the rest of our franchise.
I wish we had visuals because I want to show you how OKC would deal with a team like the Knicks. They would wave this hand over here and then pick their pocket using this hand over here. All right, so moving on to Orlando, that's team Hugh was in charge of. Hugh, you picked Jabari Smith at number 1. We all agreed, and they threw us a curveball, but not too much of a curveball because in last week's show we talked about Paulo possibly going number 1 overall. So what are your thoughts here? I should review that they also got at number 32, they took Caleb Houston, the tall wing from Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, for Orlando, it was a bit of seemed like confusion leading up, but at the end, they've taken the guy who many believe is the best and most solid player in the draft and is ready to contribute right away. And I think Paolo is going to be an incredible player for Orlando next year. He fits just like Jabari would have a lot of what they need and is a great piece that every single team in this draft would have been licking their lips with the opportunity to take. That, I guess the confusion is what interests me the most because I don't know if that was all a ploy to try and get Houston involved in a potential trade to get Houston to move up to 1 to try and secure Paolo. But if that was their motive, then you would have still thought that if that trade didn't go through like it didn't, then Orlando would have just taken Jabari 1 like many expected. So a lot of the confusion that came up in the lead up, I mean, you have 6 to 8 weeks to decide who you're going to take first. You don't have to worry about anybody else taking your guy. And that is what made me most surprised because Paolo didn't work out for Orlando. And that's got to be something that has to be talked about for up until the first game of the season. Why didn't Paolo work out for Orlando? Now, that could have been a decision on Paolo and his agent's behalf that, you know what, we don't really want to go to Orlando. Let's not go there and even work out for them. I believe that I've heard that there was a few phone calls back and forth. Obviously, I mean... No,
he visited with the team, but he did not do the workouts.
Okay, so. Yeah, he didn't do the workouts. So, I love the pick for Orlando. I'm not going to tell them that they made any mistakes whatsoever. They've got an incredible prospect who could definitely be an all-star and a person that in 5 years' time could be the best player on a championship contending team. In my opinion, that's how dominant Paolo is. But I just think there seemed to be some uncertainty. And I watched it again this morning. Everyone listening, go back and watch the draft again. Just watch the 2-minute video on YouTube of Paolo getting taken 1 because he does not look excited. He does not. There's no grin. He's not jumping for joy. This guy has just made his dream of making the NBA. He's just been handed generational wealth. And at best, I think you get a smirk out of him, a half smile or a smirk when he's hugging his mother. Other than that, as his name's announced, I get that he's overwhelmed. You're going to be overwhelmed with emotion. This is one of the biggest moments of his life. But I would have expected to, if I'm getting picked number 1, I don't see that joy and excitement and just absolute enthusiasm to be like, I finally made it for the league. It was at best a smirk. And that just gives me a little bit of concern. Even I looked at some of the photos when he's getting his photos taken in his first time in the Orlando kit. He's just doesn't seem like overly thrilled necessarily to be there. I really think he and Houston were probably telling him, we're taking you at 3. Welcome to Houston. And then Orlando, an hour before the draft has decided, you know what? He's the guy we want instead. And I just don't know if everyone in Orlando had signed off on Jabari at 1. And there was clearly a little bit of confusion back and forth. So they've obviously got an incredible player. And I'll touch on Caleb Houston too. He's good wing depth for the future. I do think it's interesting that he is the similar position, basically maybe a touch smaller than Paolo, but Franz Wagner last year, the fit of Franz and Paolo is going to be interesting because I do see them as similar guys who look really well when they do have the ball in their hands as decision makers. So I thought Jabari could have potentially been a slightly better fit next to Franz because Franz impressed a lot of us last season. But I mean, I think having the number 1 pick in this draft, it should have been impossible to not get an A+ grade, in my opinion. But just because of this slight, not concern, but there's intrigue about this fit with Paolo and whether he really desperately wants to be there or whether he wanted potentially to be somewhere else. That's why I'm going to give them an A instead of an A+ in this draft. They got the greatest talent and the most solidified scorer that we've seen, a guy that can affect the game in a lot of ways. And I mean, something about Paolo is we got to acknowledge is that his game got better and better as the season went on, and he looked his best in March Madness, which is when you want players to be playing their best. So that's a huge tick next to his name. But yeah, no, I think Orlando can't be anything but thrilled coming away from this. It's a franchise, but I would love just to be a fly on the wall at that after draft party with Banchero's family. And I want to hear a little bit about what he had to say about really truly ending up in Orlando at 1. What do you guys think?
Yeah, here's my take. No one wants to live in Orlando. No one. The only players in the league right now that want to live in Orlando are either from Tampa Bay so that they can commute to home, or their names are Lopez because they love Disney. Those are the only players in the league that want to play there.
And Cole Anthony.
They need to move the team. Like, they could move it to Tampa Bay and it would be a better team than it is currently. It's ridiculous. Like, there's too many teams in this league that they're in cities where no one wants to play. I mean, like, even in Connor, I'm sorry, but even Oklahoma City, if you spent time in Oklahoma City, there's nothing there. It's flat and that's it. Nobody wants to be there. I don't know. I want to see some of these teams move to better markets. It's kind of disappointing. I mean, Sacramento is the same example. Like, the Pelicans sucked for a long time, but at least they're in New Orleans. New Orleans is a great city. I don't know. That's my take.
Well, the other possibility is he's just genuinely surprised. I mean, if you're thinking, I mean, just think about it. You know, everything goes well at Houston. You start thinking about how you'll fit in with, Kevin Porter and Green and how you should mold in pretty nicely with that crew. And they're all about your age, so that's what you got your head set on. And then all of a sudden somebody says you're not going there. So it may not be necessarily, it might be disappointment, but it might be disappointment that you haven't thought out so well. It's kind of like an arranged marriage, you have your eye on this girl. This is the girl they told you were going to, and then they show you a different girl who you know nothing about, but she's just as pretty and she's just as smart. And you're like, oh, I don't want her. I want the one I know. But you find out.
In other words, Paolo Banchero was catfished by the Orlando Magic.
It did feel like that. And I mean, Connor just showed us a flash of Paolo shaking Adam Silver's hand, and he's not smiling. Like, he's not over the moon to be just guaranteed $40 million or something. So maybe it is that he's living in Orlando. But I just thought there'd be some competitiveness within him to be like, yeah, screw you other two guys, or screw everybody else who thought Jabari was going first. I deserve to be the best player in this draft. I thought we would have seen a bit of that when he got picked.
Yeah, good point. All right, so moving on to.
Wait, but I want to hear. Do you think it's only an A grade, or do you still give it an A+?
I think A is fine because I don't like Houston at 32. Yeah, he didn't.
That's what kills it for me.
Yeah, he didn't show me a hell of a lot. We had him at 52 on our board. So yeah, just could turn out to be a good player, especially as a shooter. But I think that's basically what you're getting there. Basically, you're just getting a potential 3-and-D guy and a guy who didn't show much of the D. And he wasn't an elite shooter at Michigan as a freshman, and didn't really show the D portion of the 3-and-D. So long way to go there with Houston. So with my Sixers, they traded away their pick for pick 23 for Memphis guard DeAnthony Melton. In that trade, they also sent Danny Green, who's injured with a torn ACL, to Memphis. He's scheduled to make about $10 million a year, but I believe that contract is not guaranteed, so the Sixers wouldn't have had to pay him, I believe, that money. So not quite sure. Maybe they had to pay a portion of it. But let's compare that to pick 26, who Houston flipped for Ty Washington and 2 second-round picks. The Sixers got DeAnthony Melton, who struggled to get minutes in Memphis, and really isn't anything more than we thought he would be coming out of USC. And maybe they dumped a little salary in Danny Green. I'm not impressed whatsoever, especially when you compare it to what Houston did with pick 26. And when you think about it, they could have taken Kennedy Chandler here, who they could use. They could have taken Ty, who they could have used. They could have taken Liddell, who they could have used. There's just so many players. The guy I really liked was actually Wendell Moore to be the long-term replacement for Danny Green. Maybe even, not, and maybe that term may have started this season. So not happy with what Sixers did. I can't give them an F because I guess they at least came away with DeAnthony Melton, who should be an okay backup. He could play D. Should be a decent backup combo guard. So I'll be very generous and give the Sixers a D for this draft.
Rich, I want to jump in and say that I know live your reaction to the DeAnthony Melton trade wasn't great, and clearly that hasn't changed in the last couple of days. But I do think you may be overlooking just how good DeAnthony Melton can be. At Memphis, I thought he wasn't a huge cog in that team, but I think he's a guy that makes winning plays and contributes to winning basketball. I think he's a really smart player who can knock down the three, who can defend, and who can run the show. I think he also does a really good job of getting his hands in passing lanes and getting deflections. So I think DeAnthony Melton might be someone that surprises you as a 76ers backup, as a guy that, like at Memphis has obviously a young star-studded team with some athletes who pop off the screen every time you watch, and DeAnthony Melton definitely isn't that. That's not what we saw, and that's not what they needed him to do at Memphis. And I think that in Philly, he is actually going to contribute to winning basketball and make winning plays. And I do think, like you said, they could have got a Wendell Moore around this area, which you probably would have liked more. But I think DeAnthony Melton is established already as a guy who can play in the league and, like I said, contribute to winning games and make winning plays. And I think in due time, you might be pleasantly surprised with his services on your Sixers.
You have convinced me, and you can watch me right now. I'm going to change it to a D+.
We'll say that's progress. That's progress in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with you too, man. Anthony Melton's a good player. He's like a more athletic shape.
When you guys run a front office and I run the Sixers, I'll be sure to ship them to you immediately. If we can't break the roster of Memphis, I know they have a deep roster, but he struggled to get minutes there. And I don't think he's a great shooter. Never has been. So yeah, just not excited. Now Portland, a team of Connors who had a plethora of picks including our favorite player of all time, Shaden Sharp, at number 7, Gabriel Procida at 36, and 57, a friend of the show, Jabari Walker. So what do you make of this haul, Connor?
I think it's good, not great. I know the Sharp opinion on this podcast is not very good. But I heard he went to Portland. He worked out, he did the scrimmages and everything, and Damian Lillard was there, and Dame basically went to the front office and was like, Sharp's my guy. Go get Shaden Sharp. And Portland in a position to where, like, they kind of, whatever Dame says goes. They drafted him. Keep your star happy. But also, Sharp he does have the tools to be a star. I'm not saying he will. But I mean, he can create his own shot off the dribble. Hyper athletic player. And I don't hate it. I do think I do have to address the Jeremy Grant trade, which is also very good for them. I thought when I got the notification, like, Jeremy Grant's headed to Portland, probably for 7. But no, 7 wasn't involved. They kind of got Jeremy Grant almost for free, kind of. And I think Shaden Sharp, with the absence of CJ McCollum now, if he is the scorer that he's advertised as, I think he can be a good pickup for them. With Procida, I don't know if he's coming out right away. Probably not.
No, he's staying over.
Yeah. So, we'll wait and see on him. But Cam's favorite player, Jabari Walker at 57. Honestly, that's I think everyone can agree that's steal of the draft, another HPP guy. But seriously, I like that pick a lot, especially for them. Actually, like, plays a lot like Jeremy Grant in some ways, but I think he's going to be a really good pickup for them. Overall, I have it at a B+, depending on how Sharp develops and how he plays alongside Dame. That could be a little worse than that, but could be a little better. And I think guys on the board were interesting. Like, I don't know, like, looking at how the draft panned out, Dyson Daniels, I'm not sure about his fit as a secondary ball handler next to Dame. Same with, like, Johnny Davis. So I think I don't hate the Sharp pick at all, but I'm curious as to what you guys think.
Kim?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at the Sharp pick. I'll let somebody else speak on him, but I just wanted to comment, like, this is the weirdest team teardown and quick tank I've ever seen. Like, they traded away really talented players in exchange for, role players at best. I like Josh Hart, but I don't like, he's not going to affect the trajectory of their team. Like, they're betting so heavily on Sharp being that guy, like being like a poor man's Anthony Edwards. Like, that's really what they're shooting for. And if they don't hit on that pick, they're losing Dame. Like, he's just gone. Like, I don't know. It's odd. It seems like they would have been better off, like, holding on to CJ McCollum. I mean, it's a couple years ago now, but this is a team that made it to the Western Conference Finals. And they've just had injury problems.
Yeah.
It's an odd rebuild.
Portland did this. Totally different people, but they kind of did this the Brandon Roy era too. When they had Aldridge and all those guys, they unexpected Batum and Aldridge in their youth, and they unexpectedly broke that whole group up. Drew?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Connor's right that, like, Shaden Sharp has the potential, and if it hits, they're going to look like geniuses. I mean, I think, again, Cam's right too. Like, if this works, rebuild probably going to be considered a success. But you have a team that clearly isn't the worst team. I mean, like, a healthy Dame with a Josh Hart and with some of these other pieces can be, like, competitive enough to not be completely tanking. So you're not going to probably be getting great draft picks. I just felt like, in my opinion, Portland was the team that, like, I just feel like shouldn't have taken Sharp. Like, they were the one team I would have probably maybe stayed away from him, just from the standpoint of, like, you can't really mess this pick up because if you do, Dame is gone. And you pick the one guy that is so volatile and, maybe saves your franchise or maybe sets you back years because you've traded all your other talent away for role players at best. So I just disagree with the strategy of let's take this huge swing because if you miss, you're losing a guy who most people consider is probably knocking on the door of not a top 10 player. Dame Lillards don't come up. Dame Lillards don't come up on the open market. They don't become available, and you're going to let him walk. You're going to be stuck with a bunch of role players at best. The thing is, I really do like Porchita and Walker. Like, I really like those picks. I like those players. So, I like what they did in the second round, but Sharp is just too much of a gamble for me for a franchise that is banking on Dame's loyal to the soil mantra being true. Because if he decides to walk away and Sharp isn't that great, good luck trying to win with Josh Hart, Shaedon Sharp, and Anthony Simons in the West. Like, seriously, the Grizzlies aren't going anywhere. The Warriors have a great young, up and coming roster. The Thunder have just as much, if not more, young talent than anybody in the league. Like, it's just too risky for me. Maybe I'm conservative, but it's a bad idea. You're banking a lot on a kid that you haven't seen play for a year. You're going to get burned.
Yeah, I agree, Drew. And the other thing that's so delicate about what they're trying to do is the fact that the wheels kind of fell off on Dame this year. They're risking their long-term future to build around a guy that's going into his 30s, and he's a small guard. Granted, he's behind Steph. He's that one guy that's such an incredible shooter that he can kind of affect the gravity of your opposing defenses. But I mean, if he falls apart this coming year with injury,
they're done.
They're done. They're done, and they can't trade him away because he'll have lost all of his value on that huge contract. So it's risky. I would love for them to just go full rebuild and trade him at this point. Send him somewhere where he can actually win.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen here.
His value is still high enough. Trade him, get the picks. Instead of drafting Sharp, draft a guy like Duren who has a need. There you go. You got Duren and Simons. Go from there. But
yeah,
they're left with no centers on the roster right now. So that could be an issue. So the next team up is Sacramento. Drew, you handled them. They came away with one pick, and that was Keegan Murray at number 4.
See, next. No, I'm kidding. I've got more. I don't really love the Keegan Murray pick. I think when you have the 4th pick and there's someone, we talked about them trading it, which I think what they should have done is trade it. Then we have Jaden Ivey fall to them. I think they did the 2 dumbest things technically, which is not take the best player available at 4 and not trade the pick that it seems like there must have been some offers. I mean, Ivy was getting a lot of looks from a lot of different places, and that's what the reports were. And instead you take the pick and then you take a guy that's not even, in our estimation here at HP, that's not even the next 2 or 3 best players. I understand fit, but I don't know. I just don't know. It just does. The roster doesn't make sense. We just talked about, Portland. You just got rid of Halliburton, who probably on paper was their best prospect and best young piece. You ship him out for Sabonis and establish, 2-time All-Star to pair with Fox. But instead of trading this pick and trying to go get more veteran help, which I'm sure you could have got something for him, Ivy was pretty highly touted, or drafting just the best player available and saying, screw it, we're going to take as much. We're just going to try to win with overwhelming talent. You take kind of a milding guy who a lot of people will have maybe closer to the end of the top 10. It just doesn't make sense. It's no knock on Keegan Murray. I think in the right system, he could be a great player, but this is a team that apparently wants to make the playoffs, but wants to do so with half the roster being, kind of okay veterans and the other half being young guys. It doesn't make sense to me. I would have rather them just take Jaden Ivey, say we got the best player available, and figure out what they want to do with Fox, Ivy, and Mitchell. But here we are with Keegan Murray, and not a big fan of that.
I should throw in that they also, traded pick 37 for 2 second-rounders, which turned out to be Jaden Hardy. They also could have had Kennedy Chandler. They also could have had DJ Liddell with that pick. So, Connor?
I will defend the Kings a little bit because I think they should have just traded the pick straight up. If their goal is I want to make the playoffs, just trade the pick because the 4th pick's not going to do anything for you. But I do think taking Keegan Murray over Jaden Ivey was actually I don't want to say smart. Obviously, he's on paper. Jaden Ivey's by far the better prospect. But it's clear Ivey wanted no part with Sacramento. And I think to draft a guy who you didn't work out, you didn't interview with, doesn't want to play for your franchise, I think that can really be derailing for, kind of both, and just create a toxic environment. So like, I don't really, them taking Ivey, I don't think I would have liked that either. But I think end all be all, you should have just traded the draft pick for someone if you're really trying to compete.
Draft Ivey and then ship him out. Like, you have him, great, trade his draft rights. That's what because then you have him and you can leverage that to something versus like, but I do agree, kind of like, if he's pissed off and you draft him expecting him to play, well, that's not going to work. But like, draft him so at least you have him in the asset room and go, all right, let me, the trade deadline. What do you got? We're trying to make a playoff push.
The Knicks wanted him. So you could have gotten, pick 11 and, whatever else, but anyway, anybody else? All right. So we'll move on to San Antonio. Hugh did the mock drafting for them. They took at number 9, Jeremy Sohan, at number 20, Malachi Branham, at number 25, Blake Wesley, and then they ultimately traded away their second round pick. And anybody know what I forget what they traded that second rounder for?
I think it's a future second rounder and cash.
Okay. All right. So they came away with 3 first round picks, 2 of them at roughly the same position. I suppose you can make an argument that Wesley's more of a combo guard and Branham's more of a wing. So what do you got for me here? What do you think here?
I think I'm pretty happy with how the Spurs came away with this draft. They have a new war chest of sort of wings and combo guard that can add versatility, and especially defensively had a lot of versatility. And this is a team that we know doesn't want to rebuild. They'd rather retool. And I think while Pop is still under the helm, this team wants to push back to the playoffs. And I think these draft picks do that. They really help the team. They already do have a lot of depth, in my opinion, at this shooting guard, small forward, power forward spot. They have a lot of good players in those positions already. So sort of the Branham and Wesley pick surprised me a bit just because of the depth in those positions. The Sohan pick doesn't surprise me at all. I think he can be a defensive stopper in a playoff series right now. Not necessarily a guy that's going to lock down an all-star, but can make life tough for a really good player in the league. And I think with the Spurs development program, his offensive game is going to develop and he can really blossom into a great player down the line. I was really high on Sohan before the draft, and the fact that the Spurs took him makes me feel even more confident, in my opinion, on Sohan, just because of how highly we all respect the Spurs organization. Branham at 20 was a good pick. I mean, we had him at 12th on our HP list. So to get him at 20, I think that's a really good get for them. Like I said, that might not have been the position they wanted to fill, but to have him still available, that might have been what literally spurred them on to take him at 20 and just say, you know what, this is a guy that probably shouldn't still be here, so let's take him. And I like the Wesley fit. He's inconsistent, he proved his first year at Notre Dame, but defensively, I think he can wreak havoc because he's really quick twitch and plays well after getting steals and getting out in transition. He's probably definitely more of a development piece because I think they do have a lot of guards Kelvin Johnson, that might not be a 2, but they have a lot of guys who are that 3-4 range that can play the 2 for them. So Blake Wesley might not see a lot of time initially, maybe not even Branham might not see a lot of time right away. But I think these are 3 guys that follow the trend that the NBA is going in, having versatile wings that can switch. Sohan has that in spades, and Branham at 20 and then Wesley at 25. To get 3 first round picks, 3 guys that I think can contribute in the future, has to be seen as a success for the Spurs. Like we spoke about with OKC a bit, though, they do have quite a packed roster now. So there's probably going to be some movement for them in this offseason. They might have let some people go. But especially Sohan, I really like this fit for the Spurs, who can be there. I think right now he probably enters their team as their best wing defender. I know they have solid wing defenders right now, but he is now their best wing defender on the roster. So for my grade, I'm giving them an A- with these 3 guys coming away.
Jeremy Sohan's like I think he is my favorite individual player in the draft. A big Baylor guy, but also he can guard 1 through 5, and there's just not a lot of players that can do that, and I think that's so valuable. But my one issue is they drafted 2 shooting guards, and like you touched on a little bit, they have a packed roster now. Like just looking at the 2 guard position, they have now Branham and now Wesley, Romeo Langford, Josh Primo, who they just took at like 11 last year, Lonnie Walker, Devin Vassell, and it's just like I don't know where these minutes are really going. But yeah, I think Sohan's a great pick, and I think your grade's pretty spot on.
I agree. Like with that depth, I'd have to assume they're potentially thinking about maybe running Wesley as a backup point or developing him to become that, because that was a need that I thought they had coming in, and in the mock I had them taking Kennedy Chandler for that role. So maybe that's what they see with Wesley down the line. Cam, what you got?
Well, but like too, I thought they got Kennedy Chandler. Like they got the steal and then they traded him away. That shocked me. I was like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, and a guy that we talked about even in our mock draft that was going to be a scary fit with the Spurs if they get him late. I mean, we're talking about like, it's kind of like shades of Tony Parker, where it's like, here's this guy that can do a little bit of everything at the point, and he has the athleticism and the speed to do something special, even though he's undersized, and they traded him. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I agree. I was going to get to that, but Drew?
I don't know how closely you guys have been following. Dejounte Murray's name is now like ramped completely up in the rumor mill right now in terms of trades. Like there's reportedly, I was just looking it up, an undisclosed team has offered 3 firsts and an established young player for him. I don't know what that means. The Hawks were closely tied to him, and I think there was one other team. So if that's true, it just makes the point guard position all the more interesting, because I don't know who's running the true one with all those 2 guards. I mean, do you put Primo there more so just because of his size? I don't know what you do there. None of these guys project to me as like, no one here is DeJounte Murray on the roster. Obviously, the guy was an all-star, but like if you lose him, you're automatically in rebuild mode. It doesn't matter what you draft, what you bring in. They're probably going to rebuild mode. So it makes giving up Chandler even more surprising to me, because at a minimum, if you have him, you're like, okay, we're rebuild. We got a great young point guard prospect who we think can run the show in a couple of years, be the guy. Now it's like, yeah, I got a bunch of 2 guards masquerading as ones. That doesn't tend to work on a rebuilding team.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't think the Spurs should trade Murray whatsoever. I've too been seeing those rumors, and
Right.
if I think their approach is to get back in the playoffs, DeJounte Murray's the heart and soul of that team, and he's the leader of that team. And I don't think they should move off him whatsoever if they're trying to trend upwards.
Absolutely agree.
What that suggests to me is that Pop's ready to retire. Like that's the only thing I can think of. It's like, okay, well, we're losing the best coach of all time, probably. Let's just go full rebuild now, because we can't build a team to.
But aren't they already?
DeJounte.
Aren't they already in that process? I mean,
Yeah.
But
They haven't gone full tank because Pop's there still. Like you got to think.
But
that he wants to compete
do they
as a
have to?
league.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, this team has a lot of young talent on it. I think, and they've made the playoffs the last 2 years, haven't they not? I know they made it last year.
But I mean, outside of DeJounte and Pirtle, probably.
Yeah,
I don't know if they have a starting caliber. Yeah, maybe Keldon Johnson, but I don't think they have really any other guys that are
Well,
starting.
the deal with Atlanta was supposed to include John Collins. So,
Right.
Mhm.
but here's where the pick. I understand Sohan. I understand Branham because of the value. What I don't get is Wesley, unless you can convert him to a point guard. Because you didn't move him, so he's still on the roster. So, and they used Primo some at point guard last year, but I don't. And Trey Jones is the other option behind Murray. So I don't know. I mean, they better hope that Wesley can play point guard sooner than later.
I really hope
the
they don't
other
trade
thing is you
Collins.
want to get something for Lonnie Walker. He's a restricted free agent, but probably in order to flip him, you're going to probably have to sign him to a long-term deal and then trade him. But yeah, I don't think you want to just let Lonnie Walker walk, do you? I mean, he's not turned out to what we thought he would be, but he's still, he's been progressing every year and turning into a solid player.
Yeah.
All right. So I had Toronto, and they had one pick, and I think they made a good pick here. This is somebody we discussed possibly going into the first round, and they took Christian Coloco, the center from Arizona, at pick 33. Really, Toronto is a team that came into this draft without a true center on the roster. Kem Birch is kind of a undersized five. Siakam or anybody else that they might plug in there with their plug and play guys. None of them are really true five. So this gives them a mobile big. He would seem to fit in with that mobility that Toronto has on the roster. That and he's very switchable. And I think he's a nice fit. I think it was a very nice pick. And even though they only had one pick, I think, they deserve at least a B minus for this pick. Am I being too generous?
Honestly, Rich, I like Coloco. I was willing to go to a B on this pick. I think for a lot of for all the teams that like one pick, I think they like maximized need fit. Like I think they just maximized. I would be willing to go to a B. I know we all like Coloco here for the most part. I just like he fits what they need. You can argue he's maybe behind he's one of the top center prospects behind, there's the top guys, but I think like in terms of being a rim runner, rim protector with a defined floor, he's that. And I think Toronto's going to maximize him and do a really good job with them. I feel like they're an underrated developmental place. Like they've done a really good job with a lot of guys. I mean, I didn't think Fred VanVleet would be that great because of size. I had no idea who Siakam was. OG, they've done a really good job. I think this is a great pick for having one. I think they maximize that one pick.
Okay. I just bumped it up to a B. So Washington was Cam's team, and Cam's got a lot of airtime today. He's doing well for a hungover lad. And Washington took at number 10, they took Johnny Davis. At number 54, they took Yannick Zoza.
Yeah, Rich, pretty successful draft, I think, for Washington. Johnny Davis is kind of that guy that I had circled for Washington. It just kind of like the fit, it makes sense as like a spiritual successor kind of to Brad Beal. And this pick really just kind of indicates to me that ultimately he's going to get moved. He's probably going to re-sign for that max deal, that super max deal with them. And then he'll be signed and traded to a more successful team. And then Nisoza, I really like as sort of a depth piece at the front court. They have Thomas Bryant coming back off of injury this year. And of course, they now have Kristaps Porzingis, but you got to think even he is ultimately a movable piece. They grab a nice young guy to build around with him. But really, if Johnny Davis, if they hit on Johnny Davis, they've got a pretty talented player there, and somebody that's going to really fit as a kind of like a learner behind Brad Beal, kind of one of those classic mentorship picks. So, I'll give them a B, a B minus. They didn't get a lot of guys, but with who they did get, they fit well.
All right. Yeah, I think they deserve at least a B. The only thing is that team really doesn't have a point guard, right now. I mean, Ish Smith is about the only one on the roster. So that's, I don't think you want to go to battle with just Ish Smith being your starting point. So they're going to have to do something there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're in the talks with the Spurs. Maybe the Spurs will surprise us and flip Dejounte Murray for somebody like Bradley Beal. So there were three teams that had no picks, Brooklyn, Phoenix, and Utah, and I guess we will give them a F each. I don't know what else we could do unless someone else has a compelling argument why they should not receive a failing grade. All right.
They fail.
Okay. So moving on, I'll mention some of the guys that went undrafted, that the top guys on our board that went undrafted, and I'll let you know where they're at. We won't go into much depth with these guys, but at number 32 on our board, we had Jean Montero. He ended up signing with the Knicks with Exhibit 10. I'm surprised he didn't at least get a two-way. I mean, there was at a time where Drew and I were debating on whether he would fall in the early 20s or early 30s. And I took the early 20s. Wow. Very surprised he didn't get drafted. Number 34, we have Justin Lewis, signed a two-way with the Bulls, who are desperate for some guys who can play the four. So he landed in a perfect spot. The Sixers always do this, by the way. They have on our best, this is like the third year in a row, they've grabbed a bunch of players on our best available list. And they started this year at 44, Julian Champagny. They signed to a two-way. Then at number 45, they signed Michael Foster from the G League to an Exhibit 10. And at 51, they took Amino Muhammad, a freshman guard out of Georgetown, to an Exhibit 10. A couple other guys I'll mention. At number 46 was Keon Ellis. He signed a two-way with Sacramento. Darion Sebron signed a two-way with New Orleans. And Scottie Pippen Jr. at 57 signed a two-way with the Lakers. One more guy I mentioned is Alondas Williams. Actually, I mentioned a couple more. Alondas Williams signed a two-way with Brooklyn. Colin Gillespie signed a two-way with Denver. And Johnny Juzang signed a two-way with Utah. So moving on, we'll finish up our mailbag, which we started a little early today at the head of the show, because the first question on our list was actually about a topic that came up. So question number 2 is, Manny wants to know, why did the Bulls ignore their front court and draft Dalen Terry? So he's saying, basically, we talked about this actually during the show. We mentioned that Chicago could use a shot blocking center and could use a power forward behind Patrick Williams, or maybe even in front of Patrick Williams. So it's a good question. I would suppose the value at this point, though, I mean, guys they would have been looking at would have been like Liddell, Laravia would have been still available, Roddy, Kessler, I believe, would still be available. Anybody want to tackle this, why they didn't go that direction?
I'm going to assume, having represented the Bulls in our mock draft and everything, I'm going to assume they probably know something. Either they're really just high on Dalen Terry, and Rich, I think there is some element of they viewed him as just the best player available, and they felt that taking Kessler might have been a reach. I mean, clearly everybody was relatively low on Liddell, so maybe they thought he would have been a reach. I mean, Laravia went the next pick, so I thought maybe Laravia would have been the most applicable player to take here, but so they were either just really high on him, maybe didn't like the value, or maybe they know something we don't know and have a trade or some free agency stuff in the works. Because I could definitely see, I had mentioned they have a huge backcourt kind of jam of just a bunch of guys who play the 1, the 2, and all do kind of different things. And maybe they view it as Levine's going to walk, or we're going to get rid of one of Caruso or Lonzo. They must have something in the works, because it just doesn't make sense to add another player to that logjam. And as a team that, if Levine resigns, is a playoff team, is a playoff team. Terry's clearly not going to push them over the edge one way or the other. So there has to be something going on behind the scenes we just don't know.
I guess, those are good guesses. But
the only thing I might contribute is that I think a lot of people really have been starting to fall more and more in love with Dalen Terry the more they're watching. And so I think it probably has just been a best available for them at that spot. I mean, I know, Rich, you were pretty high on him. So maybe someone within the Bulls organization jumped in at the pod and heard what you had to say, and that was put him over the edge.
Perhaps. I will say, when I think about the upside of some of the other guys we mentioned, it would seem like he would definitely have them in the upside department. So, Yeah, and definitely the more and more I got familiar with Dale and Terry, the more and more I liked them. So, all right, number 3 is from Trey, and he says he wasn't happy with the Sixers trade for Melton, and now they're talking about trading for Eric Gordon and signing PJ Tucker, which seems crazy to me. Is there any hope for this team? No, because Daryl Morey apparently wants to collect everyone who he couldn't get close to the finals with from Houston and put them all together again now that they're 5 years older. Clearly a path to disaster. I just don't understand. What I saw the numbers on what they think Tucker's gonna get paid. I forget what it was. I think
3
it
years,
was
like 30 million or something like that.
I thought it was like 20 million a year.
It was a lot.
Oh, Jesus.
It's like 20 million,
God.
20 million a year they expect to pay Tucker. And I'm like, what?
Hey, Rich, I'll help you restart your rebuild. We'll give you Patrick Baldwin. Just send us Embiid this way. We'll help restart the rebuild already because that's where you guys are headed.
Now, if you start that discussion with Wiseman, we might be able to talk. But I really don't want to get rid of Embiid. I would think that where there is hope. That's the question: is there hope? I think you could probably flip Thibault for a decent piece. I'm hoping that they don't spend an extraordinary amount of money on these Houston guys. But yeah, I mean, the Sixers definitely have some holes in the roster, and I just don't see where Tucker helps them, or Gordon. My concern when I think of the Sixers is, not so much what they did or didn't do in the draft. It's just they still stuck with Harden. And that's the guy I want to see him get rid of, but apparently that's not happening. So I am very worried though. And I mean, this is all sincerity. I mean, what is it with Morey that he wants to bring all these guys together who weren't successful the first time around when they were more in their prime? I don't understand.
I just love how successful PJ Tucker has been off the back of his short stint at Milwaukee.
Yeah, exactly.
That one championship has revived his career essentially.
Right. And
every team that's considered a contender is like, that's the guy we need.
Yeah, $20 million a year for PJ Tucker. You got to be out of your
I don't know
mind.
Someone might pay him that much.
Apparently the Sixers are considering it.
You best believe if they get him, he's starting over Embiid at center.
He's got that dog in him. He's got that dog.
Well, and we know, Rudy Gobert proved that we can't start a 7-footer anymore. They can't stay on the court.
PJ Tucker's 37, so if he signs a 3-year deal, he'll be 40. They'll be paying him when he's 40.
He'll never make it to the end. All right. Yeah, I'm just getting upset. I can't think about this anymore. Let's move on to the next question. TJ says Connor Youngberg's draft stock watch was pretty much on the mark. And I assume this is for you, Connor, specifically. What surprised you the most about the draft? Was it Baldwin going in the first round?
I'll tell you, when I got the Baldwin notification on my phone, I was like, oh my God, they did not. So he was probably one of the bigger surprises, especially from my article. Also, I think C. Brown not getting drafted surprised me a little bit. But maybe he worked out a two-way deal kind of before or after a certain point in the second round. But yeah, definitely Baldwin. I mean, I think Drew kind of ripped into Baldwin a lot during this pod, but I'm going to do it a little bit more. I don't know how you can justify a 34% shooter. Like, you're 6'10" and you shoot 34% from the field, 26 from 3, and you're a first-round pick? I don't care what you were in high school, man. Like,
only played 12 games.
Yeah, but like, put me on Milwaukee. I'm putting up at least 40% from the field. 34% from the field. Like, just yeah, that definitely surprised me a lot. For sure. I'd probably have to say Baldwin.
If that pick, if he went to anyone else, I could justifiably see that being like a D, maybe even an F, depending on where he went, but only because it's the Warriors. That's what salvages it. Like if he went to Sacramento somehow, some way, like that's an F pick in my opinion, or like the Knicks F pick, but the Warriors get the benefit of it.
Yeah, I don't know what surprised me the most. Kennedy Chandler falling as far as he did, or EJ Liddell. You know,
Liddell.
I think those two would be the big shockers for me. But you know, if you notice, all the guys that didn't have any size, we seemingly overrated them. I mean, Montero not drafted at all. Kennedy Chandler drops way more expected. Ty drops way more expected. So all these little guys. And
even Liddell's kind of undersized for his position.
Yeah, right. At least height wise, but he's got good length and he's certainly got the muscle.
Patrick Baldwin, if you're listening, please prove us wrong.
Yeah,
Please.
And Baldwin, you know, I mean, there's a guy. You know, a lot of these guys that were drafted, you know, are the taller, you know, prototypes. So including Baldwin at 6'10". So. I personally, you know, I'm not a believer. I mean, I certainly believe in potential, but I just think there's a limit. You know, you gotta do it on the court. But NBA can't seem to escape this pattern of you know, emphasizing potential over production.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I didn't even mention his vertical. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think
I
could jump higher than PJ Tucker, or not PJ, higher than Patrick Baldwin Jr.
It was the worst in 10 years at the NBA Combine.
Yeah, it was like Dakari Johnson and Vucevic had like lower, and
I thought they said it was the worst in the last 10 years of the Combine.
I think it was the fourth lowest behind Vucevic, Dakari Johnson, and another guy, Cedric Lawson.
Dedrick,
yeah, Dedrick, and they're all big men.
Right.
Like we're talking about the most.
I saw
Dedrick.
Dedrick Lawson once trip over trying to jump over a New York City phone book. It's horrible. All right. So folks, again, good questions this week. Excellent questions. Please keep it up. Sending us to admin, that's ADMIN @hoopsprospects.com, and that's the site as well. By the way, we're keeping our depth charts up to date with all the player movement, so you can check out who's where and so forth and so on. And also articles like Connor that was just mentioned in that one listener question. So thank you, listeners, and thank you guys. And we're taking next week off for the holidays, but we will be back to discuss Summer League action and free agency on our show the week of July 11th. So we'll see you soon.